All right, y'all. What's up? What's up? What's up, Atlanta? It has been a journey as we kick off the year.
All right, y'all. What's
welcome
up?
to
What's
the
up? What's up, Atlanta? It has been a
actually
journey
1 second.
as we.
All right, y'all. I think we're also over that technical difficulty, so we're going to keep this party going. It has been a journey as we start the year, but
All right, y'all. I think we're also over that technical difficulty, so we're going to keep this party going.
Hold on for a second.
It has been.
Yeah, actually, give me a second, everybody. We're just experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties here with some uh feedback and stuff.
Yeah, actually, give me a second, everybody. We're just experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties here with some.
Okay, I think we're good now. So interesting times to start the year, but I think we're good now. So yeah, so welcome to 2025 State of the Atlanta Black Tech Ecosystem Summit. We shifted from January 11th, we shifted to in person, and then we shifted to virtual today. But super excited for this conversation, y'all, because we got a lot of very interesting, important things to happen. We could have made the decision to keep on doing it in person, but it wasn't safe for everyone in the entire metro area, especially those south of I-20, those particularly in areas that were covered by shade and stuff like that. A lot of the major highways seem to be good by this afternoon, but it wasn't safe on some of those side roads and stuff like that. So here's what we're going to do moving forward. Here's our path. Tonight, we're going to have a series of panels and discussions, the ones that we would have had in person today. We're going to have a little bit of Q&A, but we're going to do two parts to this. The second part is going to be on Saturday, February 1st at the gathering spot. That will be a town hall format. So in that situation, the community will have the opportunity to share your ideas, to ask questions and stuff like that, almost in like an hour-long segment for each of the three kind of parts of the entire community, which is K-12, tech, workforce, and startups and investing. So tonight, how tonight is going to work, you'll hear from a few folks before we get into the panels. There'll be three sets of panels, roughly 30 minutes each, and then there'll be a few minutes of Q&A. The main thing I encourage you all to do is ask your questions in chat, right? Ask your questions in chat. We'll then have the ability to have those questions answered during the short Q&A period. That will also influence our ability to have a productive session on Saturday, February 1st. Okay, so that's how that will go. But let's talk a little bit about why we do really what we do here at Goody Nation. So the Atlanta Black Tech program is a part of Goody Nation. We took it under our wings last year. We've had tremendous success for the year, right? Some tremendous success. And so our mission at Goody Nation is all about closing the relationship gap in the innovation economy across the world. Now, for the Atlanta Black Tech program, it's all about helping out community members reach their potential in Metro Atlanta's Black tech space, right? And our vision is to be the most dominant Black tech community in the world. That is our absolute vision here at the Atlanta Black Tech program. So here's how tonight is going to work, right? We want this to be very engaging and things like that. And so we want you to also provide as much feedback as possible. And so we are using the platform menti.com for you all to give your thoughts. And again, we're going to use all this information to create an action plan to move forward. So you can give your input at menti.com and use the code here on the screen, 37780720, right? 37780720. And let's go ahead and test it out for a second. The first thing I want to figure out is, how are you all feeling about the current state of Atlanta's Black tech ecosystem, right? How are you all feeling about the current state of Atlanta's Black tech ecosystem? Like, I'm looking for one word answers, right? One word answers. Are you feeling super excited? Are you feeling like it's the end of the world? Are you somewhere in between? So go ahead and go to menti.com, use the code there, and share how you're feeling about the current state of the ecosystem. We'll give you a few minutes. And while you're doing that, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of housekeeping, right? So on social media, we want you all to be active, right? Share any key learnings, you hear about any gems, your thoughts, and so on and so forth. So we're going to be primarily on LinkedIn. You can tag us at Atlanta Black Tech and at Goody Nation. We're also on, at least for the time being, we are on Instagram. We are on Threads. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Just know that we will end our posting on Threads and Instagram and Facebook, all meta-related products, by the end of February. We had already made the decision to do that on Twitter based on the comments of their leaders and also their policies ending their DEI related programs, right? But in the meantime, we encourage you to be very active on LinkedIn, a little bit on Instagram and Threads as we close those platforms down. Again, we'll go back to that shortly. Now, I want to share a little bit about, why we do what we do and why this is so important. I think everyone clearly understands the state of tech right now. I think the most pressing issue is for us in Atlanta's Black tech community is the anti-DEI movement that's pervasive, not only in this country, but across the world, led by a hostile administration. There's also artificial intelligence and how that has radically shaped the industry, affecting jobs, startups, and the like. But for us, we're going to focus on what we're calling the power of positive innovation this year. So if they're going to go and say we can't say DEI, we're going to focus on positive innovation. Like, that's our code word for making sure things are inclusive, right? And so through that lens, we got a number of different priorities I'll go over in a second. We're going to focus on community, we're going to focus on storytelling, and we're going to focus on leadership. Now, to be honest with you, before yesterday, around 12, I had a different message. But I'll say this, right? There's a founder in our larger Goody Nation community. His name is Harrison Wilson. He's the co-founder of a startup called Limitless Minds, based out of Louisville, Kentucky. You may know his younger brother, Russell Wilson, quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Super Bowl winning quarterback and stuff like that. Now they have a startup together, along with a few other folks. And a long story short, they focus on taking the performance or the mindset of the world's greatest athletes and pairing it with corporate and founder athletes, right? And so one of their biggest philosophies is this thing around neutral thinking. And I had never heard about this before 12 o'clock yesterday. For those that follow Russell Wilson, he's famously known by essentially being super positive, or at least that's the perception. But what his brother Harrison was telling us yesterday on a workshop is that Russell is not necessarily always positive. He's just not negative. And so that got me thinking about the message today, right? In this time of a very hostile environment toward us, quite honestly, it can be difficult to be positive. It's easy to be negative. Matter of fact, studies indicate that you have about 600 to 700 or 800 conscious thoughts every day and 6,000 to 8,000 subconscious thoughts every day. And 70% of those thoughts are negative, right? 70% of those thoughts are negative by nature, like generally speaking, like the average human has these. And so what Harry Wilson and his team Wilson have done they have created this discipline on neutral thinking. So again, it's not about being positive, it's about removing the negative thoughts. So that's what I'm going to ask you all to do as we go through 2025, maybe 26, 27, work as hard as possible to simply remove negative thoughts, focus on facts, and not assign negativity to those facts so that we can progress forward. I said this in my message today or earlier today. If you're in a car and you have the car in reverse, you don't go from reversed to drive so you can drive forward, right? You technically have to go from reverse to a form of neutral and then to first. So I know a lot of folks are again thinking very negatively right now. Like again, I'm still working on it. What I'm going to ask you all to do is to focus a little bit and focus on being neutral by removing those negative thoughts. All right. Focus on neutral by taking out those negative thoughts. So in a second, I'm going to bring up some good folks from the larger Goody Nation community to give their thoughts. But just super quick, again, I'm going to run down how things are going to work. So after a few folks from the community, give their remarks, we are going to go into a series of panels. Again, they're going to be roughly 30 minutes long. And then we're going to take a few minutes for Q&A. Then we're going to end up with next steps, right? We're going to talk about next steps as a community, including what we're going to do on Saturday, February 1st. So expectations for everyone to give ideas. I want the chat popping. Give ideas about what you want to do moving forward, about how we can solve some of these problems, erase some of these threats, create opportunities for ourselves, ask questions in chat as well. Also help somebody. And then finally, I've never really said this before. I've kind of just alluded to it. We want you all to be so inspired so you all take action. And here's a quick story about the impact of taking action in this summit. We started doing this in 2017, Marcellus Haynes and I. We started presenting a lot of data about what was happening. And one of the panels, the startup investing panels, was Jewel Burke Solomon and Barry Gibbons, now at Collab Capital. Now, they have been talking, along with Justin Dawkins, they have been talking about this concept of spending up a fund and the need for certain type of funds for Black founders, particularly in Atlanta. And I think they'll tell you this too, but that panel was so electric back in 2017. And I think everyone could feel the pain, and not only them, but also everybody else in the room, that it was not the catalyst, but a catalyst for them spending up Collab Capital, investing over $50 million in Black founders across the country. Now, there have been several other projects and initiatives that have come from people being inspired from what they hear during these sessions. But again, I've never outright come on and said, like, take action like this. So our intention today is to provide enough facts, trends, insights for you all to get so inspired to go out there and solve some of the problems that you're seeing. And so again, posting it in the comments in Slack and in chat, we'll use that momentum to go into February 1st, and then we'll start to execute on these ideas and make a better path forward for us all. Again, this is our collective agenda when it comes to Black tech in Atlanta. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up a few folks from the community for their thoughts. Next up, we have our program manager here at Atlanta Black Tech, Rayshawn Pilote. Rayshawn, I'm going to go ahead and add you to the stage here, good sir. This is the dude who started out as a participant in one of our programs in Goody Nation, going back to, I believe, 2016, 2017. And I've seen this guy, rise through the ranks. He is a natural community builder. He makes stuff happen. And I think he's a good human as well. So, Rayshawn, I'm going to kick it over to you to say a few words.
No, absolutely. No, thank you, Joy. And I also want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for making the pivot. I know a lot of us wanted to be here in person, but, as you all know, we can't predict the weather. But as Joy mentioned, Rayshawn Pilote, program manager here at Atlanta Black Tech. Now, I know a lot of people, decided to come to this event because, there are concerns, there's anxieties about what the next few years look like. And the reality is we can't provide any simple solutions to that. There's not just one answer to, what we can do to solve some of the current issues that we have. However, there is a true understanding that we have our work cut out for us. And our work starts tonight, with these conversations we're gonna have. So, from the comfort of your own home, I won't be long-winded, but from the comfort of your own home, I want you all to, ask questions, engage with the amazing panelists that we have for the K through higher ed, for the corporate tech workforce panel, and then also the startups and investors. So please, like Joey said, make sure the chat is popping, make sure you're asking questions, and enjoy the summit.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Appreciate you, Ray Sean. And so let me say this too while he's here on stage. He'll be back. He'll be leading the panel toward the end. When it comes to questions, he's your guy. Like, people gonna start asking me for stuff, and especially when we do this thing in person and stuff like that. Don't talk to me. Talk to Ray Sean. Ray Sean's the guy that's gonna make stuff happen. I just I sit around and give orders and stuff like that. Ray Sean is the guy. I appreciate you, good sir.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so in a second, we're gonna bring up another amazing person from the community, one of our dinner hosts. But before that, I do want to take this time to thank some of the funders. So to be honest with you, in 2017, Marcellus and I spun this stuff up with our own money. Right, it was an unofficial project. We have lots of support from the Gatherers by Laws, allow us to host these events, for free at their location, but everything else was pure volunteer, sweat equity, spending our own money. But when we brought it under the Goody Nation umbrella last year, it did allow us to receive some more support. So this year, we received support from United Negro College Fund. The majority of our support came from Cape Poor Center, and you'll hear from some of those representatives shortly, especially on the K-12 side. And then this specific ecosystem summit is sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka. When we come to the in-person experience, you'll get to have some of their product and stuff like that. But just know that we cannot do this without United Negro College Fund, without Cape Poor Center, without the support of the Gathering Spot, without support of Tito's Handmade Vodka. All right. So on the note of good times and drinks and stuff like that, I'm going to bring to the stage Andrea Perry. And so after Andrea goes, I'm going to share more about what we did here at Atlanta Black Tech in 2024. But she was one of our dinner hosts. I'll get into more of that concept a little bit later on. I learned about her background last year as well. It's just a phenomenal story. And I think it goes to show the skill set of our people, especially in Atlanta. And that we can do multiple things. People are not just marketers. People are not just engineers or designers or something of that nature. People are multi-skilled. I think you're going to understand why here in a second. So, Andrea, I'm going to go ahead and kick it to you. You can take the stage and we'll go from there.
Good evening, everyone. Hey, family. So like Joey said, my name is Andrea Perry. For most of my career, I've worked in the arts industry and I transitioned into tech a year ago. I've been a member of Atlanta Black Tech for a year, and I'm hoping that my poem will spark thoughtfulness and not only that we can think, but also take action on moving Atlanta Black Tech forward. Why is it that only 7% of people in the tech industry identify as Black? Why is it that VCs hand out funding in abundance to our counterparts, but when it comes to my brown skin, all they giving out is lack? And cold shoulders and turn a blind eye to the excellence we exude. When we build our own tables and take our own seats, we're still met with opposition and an envious kind of tude. In what world are brilliant Black women sued by white men for uplifting our own due to little or no support? In what world are qualified Black men overlooked for executive level leadership positions for being born to the wrong racial cohort? This one I know, but we're here to change that though. Atlanta Black Tech fam coming together to arrange Black growth and increase Black wealth, elevating on every level as we physically and mentally increase Black health. They call us underrepresented, but salaries where the real deficit is. The only thing the word minority represents is that our portion of the funds is negative when we work 10 times harder, always the fall guy and even the martyr, never asking for charity. All we wanted was for them to fix the disparity in wages, in education, in opportunity. Anyone paying close attention could see the lunacy, an expectation of our greatness with no reward. Then even when we exceed benchmarks, still no movement forward. Fighting for pay equity, but not with the sword. Doing it by coming together in communities like this and striking a new chord. Empowering K through 12 tech professionals and entrepreneurs. Atlanta Black Tech family, the sky holds no limit. The world is yours. This is what mentorship is for. This is how we can even the score. This is how we open more doors for our kinship, building genuine connections and friendship. Here is where we start. Out there is where we begin to impart our wisdom on the generations coming up behind us, passing on the torch from the pioneers that helped to define us, learning in-demand tech skills to professionally advance, working on career mobility, earning promotions and big bands. We are innovators, over 1,700 members strong. If you can measure the love and camaraderie forged in this community, it stretched for miles long. And this calls for celebration and communion. This is intimacy you can't go buy at the market. Many of us in this webinar right now may be thriving, but remember, we still got more work to do. So let's continue to bridge the gap and hit that target. Thank you.
Listen now, that was dope. That was dope. That was dope. That was dope. She getting a lot of love in chat. She's gonna go actually join on the other side. Got me hyped. Got me hyped. So let's. I want to quickly give a little bit of more context about how Andrea came into the community in terms of the things that we did last year. I want to share a little bit more about what the state of the community is, and then we're going to go into our first fireside chat and panel. Right? I want to quickly get through this. So coming out of last year's summit, we had a few objectives, right? We had a few objectives. We said we want to do this. Now, what I want to get across to you all for this summit every year is this is basically like a community board meeting. So we're going to say like, this is our priorities for the year. And then the following year, we're going to come back and report to you what actually happened, right? What actually happened. And it's your responsibility to hold us accountable, right? It's your responsibility to hold us accountable. Okay. So last year, we said we would do a number of different things. There was no registration system for the Atlanta Black Tech community. There was no ecosystem database. We wanted to bring people closer together again during these potentially trying times. We wanted to try to train more people to be angel investors. And then we wanted to highlight the dopeness of the community. So what I can tell you is that since then, we have launched a registration system. We have, like what Andrea alluded to, over 17 registered members. Now, I want to pause for a second. This is not all the members of Atlanta Black Tech. These are the people that have registered on our platform. And through a proprietary algorithm at Goody Nation, we assign social capital to every person, right? Social capital to every person, because again, at Goody Nation, we are focused on closing that relationship gap. We're focused on social capital. And what I can tell you definitively, with over those 1,700 people, we are dealing in well more than $250 million in social capital. Well more than $250 million in social capital. And just quickly, the elements of that social capital formula is based on people's ability to give advice to each other, to give customer introductions, to make investments, and so on and so forth. So when people talk about the power of community, just by the small sliver of folks that have registered, we got $250 million of social capital, right? Now, in terms of building community, we want to do a few other things. So we started mapping out the ecosystem, all the organizations that are doing work, right? All the organizations that are doing work between K-12, college, tech workforce, and startup investing. And we've identified over 400 organizations that either directly support Black folks in tech or have an outsized number of Black folks in their programs, quite honestly. So when people say like, oh, I need a program to do something, more than likely something's already out there. And so what we'll be doing soon is releasing that database for public consumption. And then we'll continue to add to it as well. So we've identified over 400 organizations. Now, also on the community side, we said that we wanted to develop deep relationships between people. And so inspired by our good friends out of Detroit with Black Tech Saturdays, we started doing a monthly dinner series, right? A monthly dinner series. And so every first Thursday of the month, we have volunteer dinner hosts make reservations for 6 to 8 people at a local Black-owned restaurant, and then they host conversations. Everybody pays for their own meal and drinks, right? And last year, we hosted over 50 dinners. We put about $50,000 into local Black-owned restaurants, and people built some amazing relationships. They've gone on to work on projects together and the like. And that was just a pilot, right? 50 dinners, 50 grand in Black-owned restaurants, bank accounts. And then we're going to expand that. I'll get into more of that later. We also would bring some of those organizational leaders together every quarter for meetings. So we call these ecosystem partner meetings. So the first weekend every quarter, we have a meeting for the K-12 folks, for the tech workforce folks, and for the startup investing folks, right? And so we talk about what they've done in the previous quarter, what their plan for the next quarter is, and then where they need a little bit of help. And finally, we did an angel investor training program. So in conjunction with the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, 1248 Angels, and Black VC, we trained 46 people in Atlanta in the basics of angel investing, right? The basics of angel investing. And so our goal for this year is to do more of that. I'll get into more of that later. And then finally, we have a series where we feature registered Atlanta Black Tech community members on social media, particularly on LinkedIn. And so we did well over 150 features last year. Again, a sliver of the community, but we want to show how dope the community is, right? So that's what we did last year. So let's get to some of these conversations. You saw the talent of Andrea, right? You saw the talent of Andrea, and I mentioned as I bring him to Isaac Hayes III to the stage, I talked about what we're not going to be doing as it relates to Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and the whatnot. So this was a last minute addition. I appreciate him responding. I sent him a text on Sunday night, like 9:00. Like, hey man, you know what I'm saying? He agreed. So we're gonna have like a 10-minute or so conversation. I know he's super busy. I'm sure he has a lot of stuff on his plate. So I want to kick it over to Isaac Hayes III. Isaac, if you just want to quickly introduce yourself, share more about your product and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Isaac Hayes III. I am a founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase was an idea that came to light in 2018 for me to create a next generation social media platform that removed the limitations of shadow banning and content suppression, but also allowed anyone to monetize their content from day one. It was a self-funded startup with my own capital until late 2020, early 2021, where I entered into equity crowdfunding and have since raised about $17 million for the platform over the last 4 years. But I think the timing of what's going on right now with the country and these platforms, it's time for a new generation of social apps to kind of fill the gaps where these other ones are now becoming more like Big Brother and the villains in the space. And so I'm just happy to be here to talk about that and what we can do, to continue to build.
Yeah. Now let's get into it. I mean, and to be clear, like we're just kind of shooting off the cuff and stuff like that. So Yeah, I do want to. Yeah, let's talk about threats, right? So, and then what does it mean for someone to make conscious choices on who to support, right? And so we've seen aggressive, hostile comments from the dude that purchased Twitter. We've seen aggressive, hostile comments from the dude that founded Meta. My personal opinion is that you shouldn't support someone, you shouldn't use their product if they don't rock with you, and obviously if they're hostile to you as well. And so, from a Goody Nation perspective, we made we made the decision to move off of Twitter, and I just refused to call it the other name, by the way, months ago. And then, based off Zuckerberg's recent comments, again, we're moving off of Meta-related products as well. I also understand that it can be difficult for other kind of creators and people who make their money, their livelihood off of these platforms, and also people that also keep up with their family, particularly on Facebook. Right? It's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But I guess my first question to you is, what's your thoughts on this? These hostile environments, and where do you kind of see this thing going?
Well, I think that Elon, the guy that owns Twitter, um, set a precedent in personalizing his his energy and essence and how he runs his company by way of just injecting himself in actually the tech. So following, you get Elon's, posts, even if you don't want them, you get his posts in your feed. And so he's turned, a really solid product and a very necessary product with microblogging and citizen journalism with Twitter into something that is just totally defunct and void of any kind of I don't know, dignity or grace or whatever. It's just a terrible place. And then with the Meta switch, it's very unusual. It seems like that's positioning to kind of assume that TikTok will not be around. So a lot of the discussions that were had before the Supreme Court's decision and a lot of the changes post still seems like they're posturing and positioning in the understanding that TikTok is going to either go away or it's going to be different from what it was, and they stand to benefit from those changes.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that. And by the way, I guess I didn't say this. It was not obvious for folks. Isaac is here in Atlanta. That's why he's here. So we gotta have our folks. So what's our path forward, right? And what's the importance? More importantly, like what's the importance of owning on platforms or supporting people who are supportive of us, right? I mean, that's my understanding, like why you started this again for the creators, but obviously, as a Black person, we got to assume that you got our best interests at heart as well. So, what's the importance of it, and also, do you feel any kind of responsibility? Is it heavy?
Well, I mean, when it comes to the word creator, Black culture is the creator. And I started to do, research and just learn things about, amazing African-American inventors that had their ideas stolen. And so what it brought me to realize, which I think we all realize, that Black culture is American culture and that it's probably the most valuable thing on earth because you can only get it from us in the United States of America. Whatever we put that culture into, it turns into something that is $1 billion, $1 trillion corporation. So I always say, like, Black culture is like water. Like, it's like you really can't hold it, but once you put it into some sort of infrastructure, it becomes something that the world just can't live without or is just drawn to. So when I say, when you put Black culture inside of a tennis shoe, you get Jordans, right? Or you put Black culture inside of phones, in apps, you get the Instagrams, the TikToks of the world. You put Black culture inside of sports and athletics, you get the modern day NBA, NFL. And so my biggest issue with all that is we have this disproportionate relationship, this predatory, exploitive relationship between infrastructure and culture. And that bothers me because when we need these multi-billion-dollar corporations to have our back, they pivot in the same way that Meta and all of them have done. And so for me, I got tired of just having to say, okay, well, are we going to fight for respect or demand respect, or actually build an infrastructure that we can then fill with our culture in the same way? And it's welcome for everybody. It's, I didn't build Fanbase to be an exclusive Black platform. I built it to contain Black culture, but also be mindful of the fact that I'm not here to exploit our culture. I'm here to allow us to invest in it, own it, allow others to appreciate it, and then scale that into a business that we all own, and then in some way exit that company and then create generational wealth amongst the 19,000 investors that we do have for Fanbase. I feel an enormous amount of responsibility, but I still understand it's the necessity to have something. These new platforms are just imperative because now the messaging is changing. Now they're actually removing hashtags. They're making you follow people that don't align with your views, and that's just not that's not morally, sound and correct. And so I'm a person that wants to build something that everybody can use. If you disagree with what I have to say or what people have to say, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with discourse and disagreement. I'm not fine with censorship and manipulation, and I'm not cool with that.
Yeah, I think that's also part of the Atlanta responsibility as well. And I didn't say this earlier, but the rest of the country, when it comes to Black tech, and again, I know folks all across the country, from a community-wide perspective, they are looking at, literally, they're probably tuned in right now, or they will watch it later. They want to understand how in Atlanta we are responding to these things, right? And so they look to us essentially for leadership from a community level, from a product level as well. And this is part of the responsibility essentially of living in Atlanta. People want to move to Atlanta for various reasons and stuff like that, but that comes with a little bit of responsibility in terms of doing the right thing and making tough choices. So no, I just want to take a few more minutes of your time. I know you're super busy. Let's talk about action, right? Let's talk about action in the path forward. So what's the next step for Fanbase? To be very clear, everyone here, I'm going to make an ask for you, everyone, to sign up. And if they're, I don't know about the equity crowdfunding opportunity as well, but what can people expect on Fanbase? What's next? Talk to us about the future.
Well, I mean, we've seen a massive growth because of the instability in the market. The last couple of weeks, we've gotten over maybe 600,000 users in the last 2 weeks to join the platform. We've been, ranking pretty high on the app stores, and people have been really learning about the platform. I think the one thing that I can say is that capital, like anybody in tech that knows, any of us out here that have started a company, the importance of having capital to scale that business. And when it comes to social media platforms and tech in that space, you need large amounts of capital to really compete with the big boys. So we launched an equity crowdfunding campaign for $17 million on Start Engine. And we're a little over 7.3 million now. And so we're getting close to kind of reaching that tipping point where once you get over half, people start to really come in and take up the round. But the importance of that part of this is because it gives us the capital to compete. One of the things that I learned getting into the space was that it's not what can be built. We can build anything. It's how fast you want it done. Right. Yeah. So to be competitive with platforms like Meta and Instagram and TikTok and X, they have a huge head start. They have enormous amounts of capital. We need capital to kind of compete and build product to kind of catch up to their functionality, which we can. But the one thing that they don't have is they don't have culture. They don't own the culture. We own our culture, and we can take that culture wherever we want to take it. So the ability to move and mass migrate to platforms like Fanbase, like Spill, and elevate those platforms is crucial because you can see the effect that mass migration has on the valuation of social media platforms. What happened with Blue Sky, right after the election, they got, I think, 18 million users within a 60-day period. And, they're now valued at $700 million. So they can probably go raise 70 million or XYZ. And so it doesn't, and I don't think Blue Sky, I always said Blue Sky is not necessarily better than Twitter, but now they have the capital to kind of catch Twitter and build better and build faster. So when I ask people to join Fanbase, I understand that we are a solid platform without a doubt, given what we've been able to raise and accomplish, but there's so much more to do. And so that type of support from the tech community, from the Black media community, from users, downloading the app and helping us elevate our message, and letting people know that there's actually a choice. I think a lot of times we get deflated and exhausted, like we have nowhere to go. We're stuck on TikTok, we're stuck on Instagram. They can treat us however they want to treat us. And so now there's a real shot to really own our culture and really direct the way that we flow it. So I do, definitely want to make sure that fan base is a place that all of us feel comfortable building community and utilizing, and then telling everybody to invest. And this is another thing that the investment part is important to me, because it's not often that even in equity crowdfunding, this method of actually investing in a tech startup on the social media scale, really, when you compare these apps and these other platforms, these companies are worth 1.5 trillion, 300 billion, 200 billion, 90 billion. These are huge platforms, and the ability for us to create something and have equity in that. And we're still in an early stage in the sense that our valuation is not so high that there's not enough room for us to scale this to a company that is worth 10 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion. I really believe that we have the ability to do that. So that's why I tell people to invest, because I want nothing more than to be standing in a room full of 20,000 investors, 6 or 7 years from now when we go public or get acquired, and people will say, well, why are you selling? Because we just made 19,000 multimillionaires. And I want to be able to do that, because then that spawns the seed of generational wealth. I don't know why there's a fire alarm going on, but that spawns the seed of generational wealth that allows us to do what we need to do.
Gotcha. Well, we'll let you get out of here. So, how can people support you? And if you got to run, that's totally cool too.
No, a pipe burst, and so they said they weren't going to cut the alarm back on, but it's okay. I can hear you though. Okay, I just don't want to be annoying.
Cool. Okay, well, yeah. So, how can people support? Right? And I know we have another panel, but so how can people support? Is it become users? Is it become investors? Is it both? And how do they do so?
So definitely download the app. It's on iOS and Android. And then you can invest in Fanbase at startengine.com/fanbase. And the minimum to invest is $399. That's extremely, important, because it helps us, again, scale the platform and compete. And we're competing. We're up there with these big boy platforms. So I'm just honored to be mentioned amongst these giant platforms that are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. So
Perfect. We're going to, again, as a community, we're going to start moving the Atlanta Black Tech accounts over there as well. Also, Isaac, we love to talk about maybe hosting some conversations there, and even as we go into the one on February 1st. So I'll offline with you about that and go from there. Once you be safe out there and stuff like that. So I appreciate you coming through. And again, everybody go to your app store or whatever, download Fanbase, and then visit startengine.com / is it Fanbase, Isaac? Yep, to invest $399, $400. I'm gonna do it tonight personally, and then let's get it, y'all. Appreciate you, good sir. All right, cool. Okay, so again, this is very timely conversation. What's going on? It wasn't part of our original plan, but we thought it was important to have this conversation. Let's go ahead and get to our first panel of the night. And this is going to be around K-12, right? It's about the kids here. It's about the kids. And so as I bring some of the panelists to the stage, we do have another series of questions for you all. And so just to kind of, get you all's thoughts on things, I do want to get a sense of how many people from last year that are watching right now attended last year's summit, right? So go to, again, minty.com, put in the code there, 3778-0720. How many of you all attended the panel or the summit last year? Also, what are you all interested in achieving today? So as you answer your questions, you can just kind of move on to the next one, right? What are you all interested in achieving today? And the biggest thing is kind of setting the stage for this conversation. What do you believe is the biggest barrier to Atlanta's Black K-12 students entering the tech workforce? Right. What do you all believe is the biggest barrier? Go to minty.com, put in the code 3778-0720. And then we're going to I'll come back later and share some of the results. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to this amazing group of folks in the education space. They care deeply about the kids. So, Andrea, I'm going to kick it to you. Go from there. Unfortunately, we weren't able to use the slides. Maybe we'll just talk through it, but we'll kind of go from there. So I'm going to call screen now, and Andrea, I'll take it. You can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Joey. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Andrea Miller, and I'm going to be moderating the K-12 Computer Science Ecosystem panel tonight. We have a lot to discuss, but before we begin, let's meet and learn a little bit about our panelists before we jump into some information and discussion. So ladies, briefly introduce yourself, your role in your organization if you choose to share, and just how are you connected to the K-12 computer science space? Anona, we're going to start with you, then we'll go to Erica, Lavita, and end with you, Shayna.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Anona Shugart-Walker. I currently work in the social impact space, and prior to that was a classroom teacher, district administrator, and also did college success work. So very passionate about creating pathways for students to be able to be socially mobile. Thank you again for having me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Erica Moore, and I serve as the executive director of an organization called the STEM Funders Network, which is a national organization and a collaborative of grant makers pretty much from around the country. And I say pretty much because unfortunately we don't have any members from the Southeast that are a part of the network, and that's a problem because that means that voice isn't a part of that conversation. My background, graduated from tech, worked for IBM, worked for BMC Software, worked for Southwire, and then transitioned into nonprofit leadership like executive director for Tag Ed, and then philanthropic leadership. So K-12 computer science is very important to me just based on everything from my degree to the roles that I've served in and the capacity in which I serve right now. So I'm honored to be here tonight with this amazing panel of all women that are a part of this discussion for the evening. Thank you for the invitation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lavita Williams. I work in the education K-12 space. Previously, I was also a former computer science teacher for many years and did a lot of curriculum writing for various ed tech companies. And so I am excited to be here tonight to share a lot about computer science education and where we currently stand. I'm truly passionate about computer science education as I've been in education for about 20 years. And so I've definitely seen the pathways and the growth that it can create for Black students. So thank you all for having me here today.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shayna Vidal-White. I am the Director of CS Equity Initiatives at the KPOR Foundation. KPOR Foundation is located in Oakland, California, but we do have initiatives in 3 of our target cities, which is Oakland, Atlanta, and Detroit. I do a lot of the work nationally for us and then also lead our CS for Atlanta initiative, which we began last year, which is a partnership with our 8 Metro Atlanta districts to help bring more equitable CS outcomes to students in those districts. We have some initial data that's showing that, of course, as we all probably realize, CS is not equitable because our educational system is not equitable. But we are trying to, through this CS for Atlanta initiative, as well as some of the people on this panel, as well as other national leaders, bring more equitable computer science outcomes so that kids not only have access to computer science, but it's quality access. And then they can engage in those opportunities to see if tech is a career they want to pursue.
Okay, thank you so much for those introductions. So as you all can see, we have a wealth of knowledge and expertise speaking to you this evening. So Shayna, I want to actually kick it back to you. Given the lens of your current work that you explained, can you provide us with some context and some data, including any advancements regarding the state of technology education for Black K-12 students in Metro Atlanta, and particularly their readiness to be competitive in the tech workforce?
Sure. So there's always a report that comes out every year that kind of does the state of computer science education. It's done by ESEP, which is Equitable Computer Science Organization, and code.org. And this past year, they noted that 57% of high school students have access to computer science courses nationwide. I would say Georgia is above that average, but still, that is a data point that does not have full context. Having access and who's actually in the classes are totally different story. We've done some data deep dives for our Metro Atlanta districts. For representation of Black students, we've also looked at some of the other demographics like girls, and then also students with disabilities, because we know in a lot of our public schools, Black students are often students with disabilities as well. And that will also deny them access to computer science courses. Of the 8 metro districts that we work with right now, and those districts are Atlanta Public Schools, Clayton County, Cobb County, Decatur City, DeKalb County, Fulton, Gwinnett, and Marietta City. Only 3 of those counties, and that is Atlanta, Clayton, and Decatur, have Black student representation in their courses that mimics or is very, very similar to the demographics in the actual schools. So that means, for example, if one is the number that's saying that there are X amount of Black students and that same percentage of Black students are taking CS, that is what we're trying to shoot for that number to be 1 or higher. And APS is 1.15, Clayton is 1.05, Decatur City is 1.05, and Fulton County is 1.04. All the other districts are below that 1 number, which is part of the reason that we're doing this work in Atlanta. But then we look at other intersections of student data, like girls. There are no districts in our 8 district group that have an equal representation of girls that is representative of the number of girls in the school. Same with students with disabilities. Those numbers are very low. They're not close to 1. And so that's the numbers that we're trying to close the gaps on to bring up. Again, I always like to mention is that we're talking about quality CS, not just putting kids in front of a computer, but having them engage with computer science critically, understanding that we want them to become critical consumers of these technologies, and we want them to ethically produce them. I know that Mr. Hayes just talked about his social media app with Fanbase. We want a lot of kids that are leaving our K-12 schools to be able to do some of those same things to create, but we also want them to be critical consumers of these technologies so that they are aware that meta technologies are doing stuff with their data. How can they protect their communities from surveillance? Those types of things. So when we're talking about computer science experiences, we also want kids to understand the societal and impacts of computing in those computer science classes. That's what we deem as something quality, not just teaching kids how to program or just teaching kids how to code.
Thank you so much for that information. I think that is humbling, and it grounds us and really helps to paint a vivid picture of where we are currently. So, given this context and in the spirit of tonight's theme, imagine this, and this question is for everyone. What is your ideal vision for the tech workforce development of our Black K-12 students in Metro Atlanta? And what would you say are 1 to 2 challenges in your work or that you just see in general that are significantly threatening this vision? So we'll go in the same order as before. We'll start with you, Anona.
Shayna, thank you so much for grounding us in the data and really painting a picture of the situation where we find ourselves. So when I think about the vision for students in going into technical fields, I really think about the pathways that we want them to have access to so that they gain the knowledge and skills that they're going to need to thrive in our digital economy. And there are a couple of key components, and I think Shayna has touched on several of these. I mean, for one, I want all Black students to have access to inclusive classrooms that celebrate the contributions of Black technologists and change makers. And unfortunately, to date, that is not the case. I envision a world where all students have access to really high quality instruction in all the fundamentals: literacy, numeracy, digital skills, how to navigate the internet, how to make ethical and responsible choices, as Shana talked a little bit about. But I also envision a world where Black students have access to role models who share their identities. So much of our challenge, I think, in this work is helping students to see themselves in technology and really demystify what tech is, who belongs there, and the kinds of problems that they'll get to solve if they decide to pursue the world. And then finally, I think we have such strong communities, but our communities aren't necessarily equipped always with the information needed to really coach students to pursue tech courses and tech pathways. For example, when students take advanced placement computer science, we see that they tend to major in computer science at the post-secondary level at much higher rates. And so we really need the communities to be equipped with the knowledge and the skills and the coaching talking points that they need to be able to encourage students to pursue that. So I think, as I've talked about some of the challenges, but I think making sure all students have access to high quality foundational skills is one of the greatest barriers, but then also helping to shape and helping students to identify that identity, the confidence, the sense of belonging in tech are really important.
So number one, plus one to what Anila and Shana have shared. And again, I also echo the thank you to Shana for centering us in the conversation. Two things. One, as it relates to access, particularly from an economic mobility standpoint, and two, as it relates to philanthropy. So relative to access, Shana provided some very critical data points, right? And then the reality is, particularly when we talk about when we make associations, right? So there's the numbers as they sit in terms of the representation of students just taking, CS courses and high quality CS courses. But then if you associate that with things like our scholarship, our state scholarship program, right? So the Hope and the Zell Miller, our Zell Miller in particular, in addition to the GPA, like students have to take 4 hours of rigorous courses to be eligible for their own state scholarship. And if we think through one of the points that Shana made, right, where those courses are not even made available to students, you are literally impacting their capacity to gain a scholarship to a 2-year program, to a 4-year program in their own state and as a part of their state institutions that they might be right down the street from, right? If you're talking the metro Atlanta school systems that she referenced, that's detrimental to the forward progress and the forward opportunity in building the generational wealth if students don't even have access to these things from a course perspective, and then it becomes residual in terms of the additional impact that it has. So increasing the accessibility, changing policy to ensure that these things can exist, particularly now that we're on the other side of Senate Bill 1080. These are the things we have to focus on. These are the things we have to champion. These are the things where we have to ensure that our voices don't go silent or quiet to ensure and enable this for the students. So I'll get off that soapbox and move to the second one in terms of a vision from a philanthropic perspective. So particularly given the landscape of where we sit currently, and I know Joey gave us the charge of being positive, but as we acknowledge the where we are, and the things that are being threatened, like the Department of Education, the things that have been stated and policies that are now being put in place in the last 24 to 48 hours, it is a call to private philanthropy to lean into this conversation, to become active participants in creating that access and creating those equitable opportunities. From the standpoint of we can no longer have a high dependency on what will be available federally, we need to have a greater dependency on what's going to be able and what's going to be available privately from a private philanthropy. So from a vision perspective, we need more of that, and we need more participation in that space. Thank you.
Thank you all. So when I think about my ideal vision for the Black K-12 students. Number one is definitely making sure that we provide equitable access to high quality computer science education. I think Shana mentioned that, as well as Anona, and not just high quality computer science education, but it needs to start from an early age. I think having more early exposure in our elementary schools, as well as making sure that students understand that there are clear pathways that can lead them from the classroom to the tech workspace. I also think that when we think about elementary school and computer science, we need to think more about computer science integration. And that kind of goes well beyond, when we're thinking about elementary, middle, and high school, understanding that when we're looking at some of these content or academic subject areas, such as math, science, social studies, ELA, think about the ways that we can integrate some of those computer science and make it an interdisciplinary subject, so that way it can really resonate with students and their lived experiences. Also thinking about some robust partnerships with industry leaders. I think that will be helpful to help provide some hands-on experiences. I know Anona has mentioned the mentorships, as well as having some more career exposures. When I think about maybe some of the barriers, I think, and this has been mentioned previously, but just being able to have that teacher preparation, and not only making sure that teachers are adequately trained, but seeing if they're going through some education programs, having computer science embedded in some of those pre-service teacher programs. For many of our schools, there are a lot of educators who are computer science teachers, but that was not maybe their choice. And so many of them lack some of that quality training that is needed. And so I think that sometimes can be a barrier. And then sometimes I think also the retention piece. We're starting to see, while we have increased the number of computer science teachers and certified computer science teachers in the state of Georgia, we do still have a hard time retaining those teachers. And I think, we have to make sure that we're building those teachers with confidence, making sure that they have access. I know we talk a lot about the access to the students, but we also need to think about the access to the professional development opportunities that are available for those teachers. And then being able to really reach out and make sure that we're figuring out a plan on keeping those teachers and retaining those teachers, so that way, they can be competitive and they can go back to their students and build some of those career opportunities that are available to them.
I figured since we were behind, I was going to just let you continue on because I started, and that way everybody else was able to answer the question. So my vision, of course, is to dismantle everything and start all over because our educational system is inequitable and will never be equitable in the state that it currently is in. So we can't expect Black students to have success in an institution that was created for literally and based on the premise of whiteness and white supremacy. So that's my vision. Is to dismantle everything and start all over. But I know that it's not feasible. All the things that everybody's talked about before, I 100% agree with. And I think the big piece is listening to teachers. I think that's something that has not happened very, very well, especially since the beginning of the pandemic. We've just continued to inundate teachers with stuff. As a former teacher, I taught in Gwinnett County, taught for 16 years. And there were so many times that I was not listened to, and I'm the person actually working with students. So I can tell you what does and does not work. A lot of people that don't work in schools have lots of ideas for people in schools, but they don't have the practicality to actually implement them. So I think listening to teachers, passing the mic and elevating their voices is also another thing. And I think the other big thing, I think Levita and Anona have also mentioned, is most teachers need two things. They need time and money. If what you're doing for teachers does not give them time or money, then it is wasting everybody's time, not only students, but those teachers and those schools. So pay the teachers for attending these trainings, encouraging them with stipends, those types of things. And then also find ways to alleviate their schedule so they're not teaching or have literally 6 preps to prep for that are all different things and that kind of stuff. So I think that onus is on school buildings and school leaders to do a better job of making sure that all teachers are better equipped. But ultimately, our schools are inequitable. So until we kind of tackle those issues, CS is going to remain inequitable as well.
Woo, that was some information right there. Thank you all so much for that. And so in the interest of time, what I want to do is, and I think some of you all have started to touch on this, because Lavita, you talked about teacher prep. Shayna, you went into what teachers need. Erica, you talked about private philanthropy. And I think everyone, here tonight wants to know, what can we do? But some people may not have the access into school leaders and teachers. If there is anything that is like specific, immediately actionable that people in this audience can do, that they can lean into, that'll directly impact local efforts to improve the readiness, what would you suggest that you haven't suggested already, or you want to just re-emphasize?
I mean, I would emphasize just the CS for Atlanta movement. Feel free to get in touch with me. As I said, the partnership has started with those 8 districts. We do have the hopes to expand once we see some good outcomes, but we just started the initiative last May. So we're not even a full year in yet, but we have seen some progress. So I would say connect with me. I think somebody mentioned in the chat, which is something I actually did. I actually ran for school board. So if you are in a position where you're not tied to a K-12 school, you can run for your local school board. We need more informed people, and we need more Black people on school boards, because most of the school populations in Metro Atlanta are predominantly Black. And so run for local school board. That is where you can, in effect, as Eric mentioned, policy, because that's where all the policies that come down happen. I think the other big thing is just making sure that you're not, I don't want to say overstepping bounds, but reach out to people that have been doing the work. So you're not going to just reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of people in Atlanta that have been working in the K-12 space, the ones on this call, and a lot of others that I would be more than happy to connect you with. Please reach out and just offer your services, even if it is just, I'm going to come and do some guest speaking, or I'm going to come and do a hackathon at the school, whatever the case may be, just to get involved. Because not only, as Anona mentioned, do the kids need to see people that look like them in computer science, but they need to see that it's something that is a viable career. And the thing that I always announced upon to my students is it's a career that makes you money. And so financial stability is a big thing that Black communities are all seeking. And so this is a great way to live that financial security by getting engaged in the tech workforce. So I think the big thing is just to get involved, plug in somewhere. Small, large, medium, it does not matter, but plug in, because the kids need you, teachers need you in these schools. And basically that is how we're going to move this train along. It's of course going to be a little bit slower now with our new incoming president, but ultimately it's still going to move, and it requires all of us to collectively decide, how am I going to get my hands in this pot and help things move along to make things better for Black kids in Metro Atlanta.
Thank you so much for that. Are there any other comments from the other ladies?
I'll just add, that was a beautiful response, Shayna. I feel like you captured it really well. The one thing I'll say very specifically, getting back to this idea of building interest and identity with tech, if you are an individual, it is really easy to go, as Shayna said, visit a school and do a talk on what you do, to sign up to be a mentor. And these things actually really make a big difference for students. But if you are an organization or a business owner, I encourage you to consider hosting high school interns, high school apprentices, and bringing them into your space. Now, this may require policy change and additional resources, but it's worth it to really demystify, again, what it means to go into tech and really boost the interest, because in Metro Atlanta, there's a really big gap between students' interest in tech and their aptitude, their ability to succeed. And we need to begin to close that by doing some of these individual things, but also these systemic things to really create greater alignment between what's happening in schools and what's happening out in the real world.
Thank you so much for that, Anona. Erica?
Yeah, I just want to double down on the policy aspect. I know it didn't really resonate when I mentioned it before, but Shana, I appreciate you for calling it out in your comments, because a lot of times when people hear policy, right, they make an assumption that it's in reference to something big, or they think about it from a federal perspective and don't really concentrate on the policy that happens in their backyard, right? So everything that was discussed, professional development, funding for greater access to courses, making sure, that there's certification, greater certification available for teachers, ensuring that more schools, particularly in under-resourced communities, have not just the teachers, but also the computers to be in those schools, or the one-to-one technology. Those are things that can be impacted by policy changes. So going to your school board meetings, showing up for committee meetings under the gold dome downtown, identifying, just keeping up. There are apps that allow you to keep up with policy changes, policies that are on the table when those committee meetings are happening. And there is now officially a technology committee that exists right within our state legislation. Those are the ways that you can make a difference. And oh, by the way, if they dismantle the U.S. Department of Education as they're planning to do, that's going to put even more autonomy in the hands of states. States actually already have a lot of autonomy. It's just how they use it, and they use it disparately, unfortunately. But they will have even more. That's the whole quote unquote intent if the U.S. Department of Education gets dismantled. So that puts it back in our hands. So I just want to re-emphasize that word, because policy shows up in multiple ways, and we have to be okay with showing up for it. I think this past election reflects the need for showing up. And if we don't want things to always continue down in a trickle down and in a residual and in a domino effect, we have to decide we're going to show up, even if it's not pretty, even if it's not easy, even if we're standing there alone. But we have to bring our voice, we have to bring our circle of influence to the conversation and to making the impact, all the amazing, impactful changes that you've heard all three of these women talk about tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies, for such an informative and a thoughtful, candid conversation. I'm more than confident that this audience will be walking away with a much better understanding about where we are and how we need to mobilize together in this ecosystem. So thank you again. And Joy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. No, that was super dope. So give it up, y'all, to the Queens of Innovation. It's a new initiative we have here at Goody Nation, Queens of Innovation. And thank you all for your leadership. As you all kind of log off, I'll say a few things. They did not know this when they were talking about it, but I want to share quickly the results of some of the polls, right? So the number one barrier to Black students in Atlanta entering the tech workforce, is voted on by the community, is lack of access to exposure to tech career. So again, that goes to that speaker piece. And I was going to wait till the end to talk about a new thing we're going to spin up, but we are going to spin up a Atlanta Black Tech Speaker Series. So we want to take that $250 million of social capital in our community, and then we want to pair that with teachers, with schools, with organizations that do work to speak to the students. So everyone, we know this chat is popping, and those that are in Slack and the rest of the community, we want to ask that you all just consider donating 1 hour of your time this year, at least 1 hour, to speaking to students, right? To speaking to students. One other quick thing I thought about as you all were saying some things was, perhaps we just spin up an effort to get people in the Atlanta Black tech community to attend local school board meetings and meetings at schools and stuff like that. Because even if you don't have kids yourself, maybe you have nieces and nephews, maybe you got neighbors and stuff like that, it's going to take you to get engaged in order to solve these problems, right? So the panelists laid out some action items. I just announced some. And then, I'll say this, next polling question, and I'm going to go ahead and now y'all can, panelists, truly appreciate y'all can go ahead and log off. I want to go ahead and say this as well. We want your ideas, right? And so what would you do? What would you do if you ruled the world, right? If you ruled the world, what would you do for Atlanta's Black Tech K-12 computer science community? So go to menti.com, put in that code 37780720. What would you do? So given all the stuff you just heard, and maybe your own lived experience and your own knowledge, what would you do? Again, no, there's nothing stopping you. If you rule the world, again, this is our Imagine That campaign based off of Nas's classic hip hop track. If you rule the world, what would you do? Right? So as you are filling that out, I want to bring to this stage, we're going to start to transition to the next panel. And this panel is about tech workforce, right? It's about tech workforce. And we have another dinner host who's going to just super quick share his thoughts on why getting tech workforce right is so important. Why getting tech workforce right is so important. And before he does that, super quick, we got another poll question. What do you all think, is the most significant challenge as a professional and in advancing your career indoor initiative, right? So while you're doing that, Nilson, I want to kick it over to you, do a quick intro, and then just quickly share why you believe it's so important. Then we're going to roll into the panel.
Absolutely. So Milton Walker, longtime Atlanta ecosystem builder, tech person, AI, robotics guy. Joey asked me to talk a little bit about this, and just very quickly, high level. World Economic Forum was this past week, right? And so some of the things that they've been talking about on a world stage with leaders across the world and CEOs across many companies and many verticals are all tech related items. So reimagining growth, industries in the intelligent age, investing in people, safeguarding the planet, rebuilding trust. So when we think about why getting the tech workforce right is important, all of these things are relevant. All of these come back down to technology. I mean, the previous panel talked about exposure to technology and exposure to primarily to computer science, right? All of these technologies. There's several macro factors that are impacting the tech workforce, and several of these are very key important. If you take anything away from this, it's really about what's driving the change over the next 5 to 10 years that the tech workforce needs to be very focused on. So boomers retiring, right? This is impacting so many things. Boomers are the biggest workforce in the market today, right? And so as many of these retire, the impacts will be across several different major verticals. So think about impacting workforce in general, where the jobs are going and who's leaving the workforce. Impacting healthcare. Atlanta has a huge age tech initiative, and this is all sort of related to boomers retiring. So technology velocity, the velocity of technology is not stopping. Matter of fact, it's going faster. AI, automation, we talk about all these things. We talk about startups and the impact of startups. Startups is critical in the Atlanta space because Atlanta's looked at as a place to locate new businesses and locate innovation. And so without the startups, we lose some of that shine. So leading the charge again, without the tech-enabled workforce, we lose some of that importance in the global space of things. So geopolitics, industrial policy, huge thing that's going to be driving where AI is created, semiconductor industry. There's lots of initiatives in the Southeast around semiconductors. It's a huge leading factor. And several other local markets that are driving things, supply chain, manufacturing, all these things are driving significant change in the global economic system, and specifically in Georgia. FinTech, health tech, age tech. These are several things that we should be aware of because these are going to impact us. As well as, property development has always been a big staple in Atlanta. Lots of tech-enabled things happening in that space. Of course, education, ed tech is a huge thing. We just saw several large investors in the ed tech space, specifically in Atlanta. So that's going to be huge. And then I think the biggest thing for me is all of the cultural changes that are happening. We talked about the boomers. There's a little bit about on the opposite side with millennials. They'll be the next biggest workforce. How are those things driving the importance of tech workforce and us getting it right. So the biggest thing to take away from this is there's lots of shifts happening. Understand what these shifts are doing in the space and how you can react to those. So I think with that, Joey, I tried to zoom through it as fast as possible, but hopefully that's been helpful to you.
No, you did an amazing job. You did an amazing job. Appreciate it. Certainly, again, Milton was one of our dinner hosts for last year as well. So truly appreciate it. Again, this is the type of talent when you pop up at a dinner, you have some amazing conversations. So appreciate you, good sir. And so as I'm starting to bring to the stage the next set of panelists, I'm also going to give a quick update. So based on the weather and stuff like that, and Milton mentioned the World Economic Forum. Two of the original panelists were not able to make it today, Sequoia Glenn and Ava Arturo. So they're out there attending that. They give their well wishes. They will be back for Saturday, February 1st. But we have some amazing folks here. They're going to take it home for us. Toby, I'm going to kick it over to you to kick this forum off. And again, y'all, please fill out that the poll. And we've heard about why getting tech workforce right is important in Atlanta. Toby, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, cool. I hope y'all can hear me okay. But yeah, Joey, thank you. And thank you for kind of tapping me to host this. Excited about this event. I will give a brief intro to myself, and then I'll let our panelists introduce themselves. But I'm Toby Aguna. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Chezi. We are a software platform that helps companies manage their employee resource groups and other internal communities. I've been part of Goody Nation basically since I moved to Atlanta, I think in 2021. I've joined a bunch of events and just really grateful for the community that it's kind of given me as a founder. And yeah, excited about this panel, the opportunity to just talk about workforce development and how that looks for Atlanta and the broader Black tech scene. This is my first time moderating this type of event, so y'all bear with me a little bit, but I'll hand it over to, let's start with Jamie. Why don't you start with your introduction, and I'll kind of pass it to Mark and then Melanie.
Appreciate it, Toby. So my name is Jamie Jelks. I am the Atlanta chapter lead for Black Product Managers Network. And our goal is just to increase the representation of Black folks in the product space within the tech industry. So I'm excited to be here, excited to connect with people and have a good conversation.
Good stuff. Okay, let's go to Mark.
Excellent. My name is Mark Lawson. I'm the Director of Technology for Technologists of Color. We're here to support Black people in their career and help them advance. We do that through workforce development and curated events. And we're Atlanta-based.
Cool. Okay. And Melanie, you can close us out.
Hello, my name is Milani Boatswain. I am the president of the Atlanta chapter of Blacks in Technology. I'm also the Southeast Regional Director for Blacks in Technology. And our organization was founded in 2008, and we are currently the world's largest organization for Black technologists with over 40,000 members in 28 countries and over 80 chapters. And we are known for stomping the divide and establishing a blueprint for world-class technology excellence and innovation and providing resources, guidance, and mentorship to our members of the Black tech community. Happy to be here.
Really cool. And Milani, I apologize for mispronouncing your name there. All right, cool. Let's jump in. Jamie, I got this first question for you. What do you think are the one or two most important opportunities, but also threats to the state of the tech workforce in Atlanta going as we get into 2025?
Yeah, see, this is the big question already. So threats and opportunities to the Atlanta Black tech force, especially as I think of product management. I think the number one threat, Joey kind of hit on a little earlier, just like the backlash on DEI initiatives. And the impact that those would have on the tech community, especially as we look to grow the number of Black folks in tech. A lot of these DEI initiatives create like structured pathways for us to get into these companies and stay in these companies. So I think that is one of the biggest threats. And I think another threat would be, and I think there's going to be a panel after this that talks about like funding for Black entrepreneurs in the tech space. The fact that that's still limited and that there's a discrepancy in the amount of capital that Black founders are able to access is also another threat. But I do think an opportunity would be I think the fact that in the Atlanta market, we're moving, we're kind of booming. There's a lot of tech professionals here, and we have a community. And the fact that the mayor and other officials are behind making Atlanta a top tech hub, I think that's very important. So I think that's going to be a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, I definitely feel the DEI backlash being in the space that we sit in. Mark or Milani, anything that y'all want to add to that before we move on to the next question?
I definitely think another threat to add, and we kind of saw this a little bit in 2024, is just kind of the rollback of funding on the Black tech initiatives. I know that a lot of my counterparts that are leading other Black tech organizations, they were throwing money at us, 2020, 2021, as the outcry of George Floyd. And it's kind of, once society kind of got back to quote unquote normal, people became more complacent, companies became more complacent. And we did see a huge rollback in funding to spearhead the initiatives that we were funding previously, providing certification programs, providing career development, providing scholarships for our members. So we've had to get really creative in our fundraising efforts.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too. That makes a lot of sense. All right, cool. Let's get into this next one. Mark, I'll tee up this question for you. What do you think is your ideal and imagined, in a perfect world, what does Atlanta's Black tech scene look like?
So Atlanta has a lot of advantages. We have several colleges here that are pumping out the type of talent that we need. We have employers, other organizations. I think my ideal situation involves that entire ecosystem working together. I think that one of the large components, I know that people talk about the pipeline, but I also think that there's a hole in the pipe insofar as of the individuals who move into the industry, they don't get the support they need, and then they end up moving out of the industry because there's not the growth there. So I think my idea of how everything can be improved is that there needs to be tutelage from the CTO down and mentorship in terms of not just getting into the industry, but how you support your career, how you move around in your career. And it needs to be knowledge that is given from a community base insofar as that you can talk honestly and in-depthly and candidly with those around you about what you're experiencing and how they can progress their career. So I think that it's very important that we utilize all of what Atlanta has to give in order to actually make sure that it thrives as an ecosystem.
Definitely feel that. I don't know if that was my phone or not, but Jamie, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think so. In the product space, I lean very much towards the startup community, and I think my ideal state of the Atlanta Black tech ecosystem is for it to continue to grow at a startup hub. I don't see a reason why this cannot just be the startup capital of the U.S., let alone the Black startup capital. But I think we have a lot of opportunity in that space if we can't keep pouring resources into not just Black founders, but the startup community in general. I would love to see Atlanta become the hub for startups. So, and then going back to DEI, I mean, ideally, I would like to see all of our companies that either Atlanta is their headquarters or they have some type of brick and mortar here in Atlanta. I would like to see them continue to champion DEI initiatives and create pathways for local talent to get hired. I think as I saw in the chat, someone mentioned that DEI is not dead. I don't think DEI is dead, but I think in markets like Atlanta, if we focus on local hiring, we can still make sure we get people employed at some of these companies.
Yeah, Jamie, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Local hiring. Atlanta is, gearing up to be, a top tech hub in not only the United States, but in the world. I do think that, we have a lot of the largest tech companies here in Atlanta. But headed by a lot of people moving into Atlanta instead of hiring locally, right? So Atlanta is the Black Mecca. There's not a shortage of Black people in technology here in Atlanta. That's not the issue. But hiring locally, getting these companies to really kind of, be proponents of hiring locally would definitely help out the Atlanta Black tech community.
Oh, sorry, y'all missed my mute button. Thank y'all for that feedback, though. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, Milani, I'll come back to you actually on this one, boomerang it. If you ruled the world, what would be your idea to improve economic mobility for Black people? Big question here.
If I ruled the world,
Yeah,
okay,
just a
yeah,
politician
take it
answer
back
right
to
now.
Queensbridge,
Yeah.
New York City. I'm New York all day. So if I ruled the world, I would definitely make sure that access to education and resources for Black people within the community. So this is ensuring that they have resources to education, the tools that they need, the certifications that they need. We all know that these tech certifications are extremely expensive, right? So a lot of the work that I do within our organization is making sure that we have resources available to offset those costs, if not give those certifications to people within our communities for free. But investing in targeted educational initiatives, creating scholarship programs for Black people that want to get into STEM-related careers, forging partnerships with tech giants like Intuit and Microsoft to provide internships and mentorship and job placement pipeline for Black students and professionals. Also, would love to see a government-backed inclusion plan, especially digital inclusion. So, the state of Georgia has a huge digital equity push. I think that this is definitely an initiative that we can stand behind. We know that digital equity, having access to broadband is a utility. And having access to high-speed broadband allows people to work from home, allows people to attend school. And we need to have policies that incentivize companies to create equitable pathways for Black workers in the tech space and Black students in the tech space to get the resources that they need. So if I ruled the world, I would definitely lean on getting access to education, resources, certifications, and creating digital equity in the Black community.
I'll mute again. Nice. Okay, cool. And thank you for sharing that. It was a bunch of good wishes. Good luck with I'm curious about the efficacy of the government one, considering where we are today. But let's be hopeful. Oh, Joey Balton, you wanted to ask a question? You're on mute.
Yeah. So yeah, I was gonna say, if you want to still answer that same question or ask that same question to the others, I'll wait till they finish and I'll pose my own question.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Jamie or Mark, anything you want to add to that? Like, I'll rephrase the question. If you ruled the world, what would be your idea to really improve economic mobility for Black people?
Yeah, if I ruled the world, I'd get rid of gatekeeping. And really, I think I'm really on the same wavelength as Milani. I think there's a lot of people who want to get into the tech space that don't always have the social capital to get there. So one, building those relationships, that mentorship opportunities, but also just like these clean handoffs of folks. If you get people who have these strong transferable skills, they know how to communicate, they can do the job, and they have been given the opportunity to demonstrate they can do the job. Let's connect them with the hiring managers who are really trying to hire. And get them in these seats that need to be filled. I think there's too many times where you have these talented people who can't get past a resume screening, can't get past a phone screening, they go through 7 rounds of interviews and still can't get the job. I think if I ruled the world, I would create some type of system where it's, hey, the talented people get jobs and get in front of folks. So that's where I'm at.
Mark, anything you want to add to that?
I'd say exposure. I think there are plenty of jobs out here that individuals are not aware of, and that part of the reason that people are leaving is that there's not a pathway that they know about. There are not other things that carry their interest because they're not exposed. It's not something that's in their family. They may have gone to CS school, they may have come out as an engineer, but the way the tech industry is changing, that there are new jobs, there are new pathways being created. And unless you know someone who's currently doing that work, it's not imagined for you. So I think that if that there would be exposure, there'd be transparency. So not just a lack of gatekeeping, but transparency as to what is out there.
Love it. Joey, I'll hand it over to you. Do you have anything you wanted to bring up?
Yeah. So I want to ask, like, for each of these folks here, like, what are you hearing from your members? Like the real, right? Like, but the real, what's happening. So, again, things are shipping in real time. As now we're almost at the end of January. What are you hearing from your members? And then how does that affect like your top 2 or 3 priorities for the year? Right. So just for the audience, one of the reasons why we ask for tech workforce, these folks here, they run either, they essentially run organizations or chapters of organizations. They can speak for their larger member base without literally like representing a big company, right? There's a little bit of, at least in theory, there's a little bit of cover there. So, what are some of the things, and Melania, I'll speak, I'll go to you first. What are some of the things your folks are saying, and in terms of what's really happening in at their jobs? And again, how does that flow down to your top 2 or 3 things you're focused on for 2025 in Atlanta?
Well, I mean, I think Jamie hit it on the head. Gatekeeping. One of the things that I heard, I just spoke to one of my members who was recently laid off. And I think that's, we see layoffs within the tech ecosystem, but when we're trying to get people rehired and trying to get them into, these jobs, we want to make sure that we are, bringing them to people who are actually hiring. And, if we know of recruiters, if we know of companies that are hiring, being able to have those conversations with the recruiters and say, hey, we have a really highly talented person. They've been through, 2 or 3, 4 rounds of interviews. What can they do to be successful in getting, the actual job? So I think that's one of the big things that I've heard from the members, is that when you have the tech layoffs, once you've landed the tech job, you've kind of gotten through that hurdle, and then you get laid off and you're kind of going through that cycle all over again. Really kind of understanding how we can break that cycle, how we can leverage these networking events. All of our organizations throw amazing networking events. And I really want us to be, more intentional about getting our members in front of people who are actually hiring, and then charging ourselves to have hiring metrics. How many of our members have we been able to get jobs? How many people have we been able to connect them with that gave them real opportunities?
Dope. Mark, what about you? Right. So you all are mainly, developers and stuff. Essentially, I think the majority of members, correct me if I'm wrong, right? So what are the Black software developers in the light in cybersecurity folks in Atlanta? What are they saying? Again, what are some of your top priorities and goals for TOC for the year?
So we have technologists across the board, but what we are seeing mostly, again, is that anxiety, right? About what happens if I do lose my job, and who's hiring? How do I get back into the workforce? I think, as Melanie said, that they are weary of the process, right? It seems like now that there are several different ways in which to submit your resume or to in some way interact with an employer, but that doesn't mean it's a real job. You go through several different interviews and no one calls you back. You see that same job pop up again, even though you did not get it, or it seemed like it was taken. So there's a lot of kind of despair around the process. And so one of the things that I champion and we're working on is not just that networking piece in terms of just meeting individuals, but you need to know someone who's actually at the company that you need to work, that you want to work for, someone who actually does hiring, and you need to have peers who are in those corporations. And then instead of trying to get hired through a LinkedIn link, that you actually utilize that network in order to find out where these jobs are, to vet the company, and to do that. So we're working a lot in terms of not just telling people to network, but we're trying to instruct them on a better way in which to go about it.
Nice. And Jamie, what about you? So are you all at BPM? Do you all have any programs or new projects or anything you're spending up for this year?
Yeah, so we have some of our staple programs. So with BPM, we kind of deal with people at a couple different levels. We have a number of people who are looking to transition into tech and into product management. We have people who may be early career in product management, trying to level up. And then we have people who may be senior level PMs who are looking up to also level up. But I think the feedback that we've gotten from a lot of our members is just like how tough this job market is. Because people at all those different levels, one, they're either trying to get a new job or maintain their current job. And so for the people who are in this job market looking for employment, we have these new folks, these early career folks competing against people with, let's say, 10 years of product experience. So it is just a tough job market for a lot of folks. But I think some of the feedback we've gotten is kind of what Mark hit on, the fact the importance of just referrals in this market. It's really hard to get a job at some of these companies just going through their website or going through LinkedIn or something like that. You really have to know employees at those companies, hiring managers, and have someone who can vouch for you and refer you to a lot of these companies. So I think that's why it's that much more important for us to develop these corporate partnerships, to build these communities. So we're networking and making sure people have the right contacts to get them to some of these companies.
Dope. And Toby, I want to kick it over to you, and then I'll hand it fully back over to you before we close out. But you sit in a unique position in that your customers are leaders of ERGs, correctly? So whether they're customers or not, I'm sure you're talking with ERG leads and stuff like that. From your daily work, like what are you seeing? Any insights there and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the work is continuing. It's just being rephrased, I guess is maybe how I would describe it. I spoke to a customer today, pretty big, well, hopefully, knock on wood, prospective company. Hopefully they sign in the next month or so, but about 40,000 people. And they are actually transitioning to where their DEI team is being put under their corporate social responsibility arm or department. And that's simply put because, generally speaking, people don't have pushback on corporate social responsibility, but there's obviously some people that push back on DEI. And that allows them to continue to do the work, to still have ERGs, to still kind of promote, inclusive practices, just kind of rename it. And, in the spirit of staying alive, like we are, like we if a company comes to us and they're very explicitly supporting DEI and talking about employee resource groups, we can have that conversation. But we're also sort of repositioning ourselves to just talk about how Chezi supports, employee communities, because that's not, again, that specific framing is not something that we get a lot of pushback on. ERGs, DEI is something that, kind of varies from company to company. So, the work is continuing. I think most companies, despite what you see in the headlines, most companies are retaining. We can literally look at people's budgets and see that most companies are retaining their budgets. If anything, they've dropped, somewhere between 2 to 5%. I had a LinkedIn post about this recently. And I would, push anyone to find a department across any of these big enterprises that hasn't had their budget cut between 2 to 5%. That seems about normal to me. So anyway, to answer your question, Joey, I think it's the work is still being done. It's just kind of shifting what it's called, which I think is kind of just part of how business works anyway. So we don't need to necessarily say it's explicit to DEI in terms of that happening.
Right. And Toby, and
I
can't speak for everywhere else, but I know here in Atlanta, corporate responsibility, putting DEI into corporate responsibility and shifting to local hiring practices actually would not work in our favor. That actually would work in our favor. And I do advocate for any of the companies that I consult for to hire locally. Right. And in hiring locally here in Atlanta, you're able to, get more jobs for the Black community.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know we only got about 7 more minutes here according to the chat. So let's get into the next, hopefully 1 or 2 more questions. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit here. What do y'all think is, if you could kind of give people one actionable step that, the people listening to this can take away that will hopefully like champion, Black tech access in Atlanta, what would that be?
I think for me is one, stop gatekeeping. But really, we have to really continue to foster community and build relationships. I think the answer to a lot of our problems we can figure out within the community, but we have to build those relationships. We have to be social. We have to be connected, and we have to be willing to mentor other people and be a resource when possible. So I think continue to build community and foster like corporate partnerships. I think those are two good solutions.
Got it. Cool. Okay. Mark, you want to go ahead and share yours?
I would say a similar thing is that if you're in the industry right now, that you should be seeking out someone to mentor. It's not just about what they can receive, but it's what you can receive as well, because they have a fresh perspective on things. But you need to be actively trying to pass on your knowledge. And if you're not doing that, if you're not seeking out people in order to help improve them, you're not improving yourself either.
That's a good word. Milani, you want to close out this question?
Well, I definitely think that in all of our organizations, kind of, pulling our resources together, making sure that we are providing cross-organizational support. Jamie and Mark, you may have a member of your organization that is looking for a reference to a company that, is one of our sponsors or that we're working with. And I definitely want to kind of be a resource throughout the Black tech ecosystem. So I definitely think, one of my biggest sayings of 2024 is collaboration over competition within all of our organizations, and making sure that we are being thought leaders and coming together and providing the access that our members are seeking.
Awesome. And then the very last question that we got here, this is an opportunity for y'all to ask for stuff like, well, what do y'all need? How can people support you or join, the movements that y'all are pushing? And I might actually chime in on this one myself, but Mark, why don't we start with you?
So first of all, you can find us on all social media at Techs of Color or at www.techsofcolor.org. And what we're looking for participation, right? So we need you to actually come out to those networking events, meet someone, share your skills. We also, again, it's the workforce development. We have what we call Coding While Black. So we actually get together, we open up the laptops and we code together, right? So I just come out to the event, meet someone, and then share who you are with that individual. And then you'll knock off a lot of these things that I'm championing right off this list just by being in place.
Nice. Milani, you want to go ahead? What do you need?
So, plainly put, we need funding. So we need people that are going to help volunteer and help us fundraise. We are looking to kind of reorganize our organization here locally, and spreading out further than just the Metro Atlanta area. We have members in Macon, we have members in Augusta, we have members in Athens. So with that, people are always asking me how they can get involved. We would love to have volunteers. We would love for people to volunteer just to kind of do corporate outreach, even within your own company. If your company has, volunteer matching or donation matching opportunities, we would invite you to kind of join our sponsorship and fundraising committees. And then also what we need is more collaboration with you all, and we do a great job of that, Jamie, Mark, and Joey, and we've all kind of worked together, but I want to see more of that in 2025. We've got to come together, start doing more things together, pulling our resources. And I think that would definitely help us serve the Atlanta tech community the best.
Love it. If I can quickly chime in here, I would just ask for, the funny one is an easy one, but selfishly, anyone that is connected to, I'm sure there are people on this call that are connected to employee resource groups, either at their companies or at other companies, would welcome a chance to kind of talk to you all about how you're managing and supporting those groups. And then more broadly, as it relates to the point of this specific panel and tonight's event, I am on the board of a charter school in DeKalb County called DeKalb Brilliance Academy. The school's been around for about 3 years now. They're doing fantastic stuff. I work very closely with the head of school, Jocelyn Alter, and their team. We are looking for potential people to join the board, and there was a call to action in the last panel for people to kind of volunteer their efforts and get people into STEM. We do a lot of stuff with the kids that are called, it's called project-based learning, where we bring in actual people to talk about, the work that they do, and they do real-world projects on, building apps and selling products and stuff like that. So I just dropped my LinkedIn into the chat. If you are at all interested in joining the board or just volunteering, we'd love to have you. You can message me and connect with me there. But yeah, I think with that, we are about at time. So I will wrap up. I think Joey's getting back on to kind of kick us off here. But thanks y'all for a great panel. I appreciate it. It was nice to meet all of you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Yeah, I truly appreciate everything. Super dope. So here is our next step as an organization, and appreciate all the panelists here. So one, again, if you all ruled the world, right? If you all ruled the world, audience or community members, what would you do to help Atlanta's Black tech workforce? So again, go to Mincy.com, use the code 37780720, and then put there. What I would also say with the results from the last poll, you all indicated the biggest challenge in terms of professionals advancing their role is actually lack of mentorship. That's what you all identified. The second largest one, or second highest one, is implicit bias, and third one is workplace culture. So you all have identified lack of mentorship as the greatest essentially challenge there to advancement. Okay, so on that note, as I bring up the next set of dinner hosts to set the tone for the final panel of the day, the Start in Investing, what I will say is that from an initiative standpoint at the Atlanta Black Tech program, we're going to focus on sharing job opportunities. So again, to the point of like Melanie and a few others, we've got to be intentional about helping each other out. Bottom line is we all we got. When it comes to helping people get jobs, we all we got. So we got to be intentional, particularly in our Slack community, around sharing jobs, right? It doesn't have to be Slack, it can be any other medium. So our goal is for the entire community to share at least 1,000 job opportunities with the rest of the community. So our KPIs around sharing job opportunities, the goal is 1,000 for 2025. And that's simply just going to force people to be intentional. You hear about a job opportunity, share it with someone in Slack, share it via email, text message, LinkedIn, direct message, whatever it is, but we've got to be intentional on it. So very specifically, what I would say is, anytime you see it, anytime you see a job opportunity, share it with 3 people. Just share it with 3 people. And I think we'll start to have people get some jobs and stuff like that. Things that are publicly posted and some things that may not be publicly posted or are coming down the pike. Okay, so let's go into our final panel of the evening. This is the one that typically, is the most engaging, no shade to the other folks. And so before we get to the panel, we want to set the stage for it. And so again, we have some of the dinner hosts from last year. We have Suna and Kylan here. Suna, I'm going to start with you first, by the way, but they're going to take a few seconds. And again, we are kind of running a little bit behind, so I'm going to say just a few seconds to share why it's important for us to get the startup and investing space right here in Atlanta for Black folks. Right. So why is it important? Right. So before we do that, so Suna, I'm about to pass it to you in a second. Before you do that, though, we got like our final poll. Why do you all think, or what is the greatest barrier to Atlanta's Black-led startup growth? Right. So again, it's the final poll question. Go to Mincy.com, 37780720 is the code. Kind of put in what you think is the greatest barrier to the growth of Atlanta's Black-led startups. Suna, I will kick it over to you for your quick thoughts on why it's important we get it right.
The simple answer is so that we're not perpetual consumers, that we actually are creators in the space of innovation, and that we are participants who have unique ideas, perspectives that are typically underrepresented in the national and global markets. Although Atlanta represents population-wise, geographic-wise, climate-wise, majority of what the world looks like than the rest of this country. So the greater Atlanta metro, and you can go as far as saying as the state of Georgia. So if we're not in the space of innovating and creating and owning a piece of that, then essentially we're just buying it from people who are pretending to be us.
I love it. I love it. And then Colin, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it over to you.
Yeah, I love, to her point, I think it's really important not only to have this conversation because we're already doing it. A lot of the innovation and things that we're doing out of the virtue of us being scrappy and trying to figure things out. But ownership and being able to kind of take ownership from end to end is something that I think, we have to get right, because at the end of it all, we'll be the only ones to be able to sustain it. When we mentioned earlier, these large corporations move on to the next big thing, or we have leadership at the larger nations level that doesn't represent what our views might be at our level here in the local communities. And so we want to make sure that we own what that looks like so that we can continue to drive that narrative and be able to drive progress towards where we think it should be.
There it is. There it is. Well, I appreciate y'all. You teed it up perfectly for the final panel for tonight. So we'll see y'all a little bit later on. And if you all want to drop your LinkedIn or any other kind of profiles up in the comments or chat, we'll make sure folks get connected to you as well. Okay, so let us go to the final panel. Going to bring back up Rayshawn Pilote, the program manager for Atlanta Black Tech, to lead us in the final panel of the evening. Go ahead and do your thing, Rayshawn. You got some big shoes to fill from the past 6 years. Just know that if you mess this up, I will talk a lot. I will talk a lot of trash about you. But
listen, I ain't never knew you talk this much trash, Joy, too recently.
Yeah, you gotta know. You gotta know. So cool. So I'm gonna roll on off here, and we'll see y'all. I'll come back on shortly.
Nah, absolutely. Well, so for some of the individuals who are just now joining, I am Rayshawn Pilote, currently the program manager for Atlanta Black Tech. Right now, I want to take some time for all the panelists to introduce themselves. I'm sitting here, like Joey mentioned, I'm actually sitting here with some rock stars. Shout out to Khadijah from my hometown, Savannah, Georgia. So I'm gonna stop right there and I'm gonna let you all introduce yourselves. Just quickly give your name and then also the organization that you're representing today. We can start with Candace and then you can pick who's next.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Candace Mitchell. I'm the founder and CEO of Myavana. We're a beauty tech company that invented hair AI that can analyze your hair from a photo and tell you which products are best to use. We are eliminating trial and error and making the beauty industry personalized for the first time, using scientific analysis and creating a unique hair ID for every consumer. My background's in computer science from Georgia Tech, so go Jackets. And I'm going to toss it over to Barry.
Knew you were coming my way. Hey, everybody. Barry Giggins here. I'm one of 2 managing partners at Collab Capital. We're an early stage venture fund here in Atlanta, and we focus on investing in Black founders, building innovative solutions to huge consequential problems. Operator at heart, so I still think like an operator, but I've transferred to the other side, and now I'm the one writing the checks. And I will pass it over to my teammate, Baisha.
Hey there, Baidra Crumbly, investor at Collab Capital. I also co-lead the Black VC Atlanta chapter. Background, I like to say, centers at the intersection of finance and technology. So banking, corporate finance is my previous experience. To Khadijah.
I knew you were going to do that. Hi, everybody. I am Khadijah Robinson, Savannah native, along with Rayshawn, Spelmanite as well. I have way too many jobs, but amongst those, I am the entrepreneur in residence for Black Ambition. I lead an incubator program for the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, of which Grant is the executive director, and I'm also general partner at Fictive Ventures. We are raising and deploying a $5 million fund to invest in extremely early stage Black founders with all Black LPs. So I'm just generally rooting for everybody Black. Grant.
All right, thank you, Khadijah. I'm Grant Warner, Executive Director of the Center for Black Entrepreneurship, a partnership between Spelman Morehouse and the Black Economic Alliance. The goal for the center is to create for Black entrepreneurs the networks, the access to capital, the capacity building that other entrepreneurs take for granted.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm pretty sure everyone is just glad to hear all of you all's background. So we're going to jump right into it. This question is actually for everybody. So, this year I would say has started off very eventful. That's the term I'm going to use. I'm going to stay political. This year has started off very eventful. So, my question is, have you all's priorities have changed? What would you consider your top 3 priorities for this year? And I'll start with Candace again.
Eventful is definitely an understatement. But I will definitely say that we were positioned for such a time as this, being pioneers in beauty tech, and specifically in AI. Our number one priority is integrating hair AI across the entire retail industry, so that Myavana is the new industry standard solution for personalization in the hair care category. So we launched with Ulta last year, at the top of last year. Pleased to say we're growing tremendously through Ulta, and we have many other retailers next. And so, what's important to understand is how our industries are changing. The political landscape only intensifies that. But I do believe it's time for us to own our lanes in our market so we can stay at the forefront of it. In addition to that, leading a mass adoption to our mobile app. There are several hair communities on Facebook and Instagram that we plan on migrating to Myavana, because it's very important. Again, it was already stated by Isaac about who owns the technology that we are driving adoption on. And so that is our number one priority right now, B2B for hair AI to personalize retail, and on the B2C side, growing our app, because we, again, must put our stake in the ground in the industries that we're leading. And so that's number one. Number two is Myavana certified. So we just released our seal of approval to designate hair care products safe for Black women. We actually have a virtual hair club going on right now discussing toxic ingredients in beauty hair products that have affected Black women's health. The number one being relaxers, and how that's impacted the leading cause of cancer in Black women. But not only that, a lot of harmful ingredients in the hair products that we've been using. And so Myavana certified designates, number one, the products that are best for you, or unique hair ID. We got a little future techie right here. But also across salons and retailers to make our experiences personalized. I don't have to tell the story of how much we have been underserved in our market. I think that has only changed in the past decade, but we want to be at the forefront of that from a technology standpoint. And then the third thing is looking at new frontiers, right? So we actually opened our first retail store in Uganda. That is our launching pad for retail, creating a beauty tech experience. So think about the Apple Store, but for beauty products. It's technology driven, but also Africa is the new frontier. So there's a lot going on here in the United States, but our markets are oversaturated. So we must keep the global context in mind, and how we're building, and we'll be distributing products in Uganda as well. So heading back to the motherland ultimately, but those are the top key things that we are focusing on.
Dope stuff. I actually just got back from the motherland. All right, so I'm gonna kick this over to Barry.
Yeah, my life is a lot more simplistic on the investor side, and the number one goal for us this year is to close out Fund 2. So we're in the middle of a pretty big fundraise, and so we'll be making an announcement later this quarter So closing up that fundraise now here in Q1. Super excited about the what that will allow us to do and continue to do, which is investing in Black founders. And the other part of my job is, and that is will continue to be the goal this year, is finding the best founders, the best Black founders around the country. And so one of the initiatives that we do have this year is to build out the largest directory of Black founders throughout the country, particularly in the technology and innovation space. And so that will allow us hopefully to have the best deal flow for the demographic of individuals that we invest in. And the last thing that we do, which is a goal of ours every year, will continue to be a goal this year, is to dive in with the top quartile founders in our portfolio, and make sure that they are alive and that they thrive and that they go, raise their next round of capital, close their next customer, so that we can drive that growth and create billion-dollar Black-led startups.
Dope stuff. Dope stuff. Next, I want to kick it over to Baija. What are y'all working on? What are your top 3 things for Black VC this year?
Yeah. So as you all know, Black VC is the largest nonprofit membership base for Black venture capital investors in the U.S. For the Atlanta chapter, we're focused on, we have 3 core objectives, I'd say, for this year. The first being, we're wanting to host events that are focused on professional development for VCs and angel investors, industry forums, like, I don't know who attended our AI forum last quarter, but that was extremely just powerful and helpful for everyone who did get to attend, and then focus on social connections as well. The second core objective is to create and propel more Black angel investors. So just getting you all kind of more involved in what we do, and active in our chapter to connect with VCs, to share deal flow, to share insights, so on and so forth. And the third is to really improve connectivity with policymakers. So how can we get our communities more involved and knowledgeable on the public sector's work that is relevant to the startup and investor ecosystem? So working on something actually right now with, more to come, but we're working on something now that'll be a strong partnership to let us know like what's happening now in the Georgia House of Representatives, what bills are coming up, when are they moving to Senate for voting, and how will they impact us?
Perfect. Khadijah.
So my top 3 priorities are Black people, and Black people. I have no other priorities for this year. I am single-mindedly focused on the 78% and the 92%, and that's it. So not people of color, not women of color, not minorities, not underrepresented. I'm thinking about Black people, and that's it. And to that extent, I am leading this incubator. It's for Black startups in Atlanta with the Center for Black Entrepreneurship. I'd say a key priority for me, though, is closing Fictive Ventures First Fund. So this is a $5 million fund. And when we close it, to my knowledge, it will be the first venture fund that closes with all Black LPs investing in all Black-led companies. And I hope and pray that it is not the first. My goal is to make it the first of many, show that this model is viable, that we can invest in one another, that we can build each other up, we can make money together, and we can fuel innovation amongst one another. So I am prioritizing all things Black, and honestly, also prioritizing action. Like, I'm tired of being mad online. I'm tired of the panels where we talk about the things that we already know. I am prioritizing action and making SHIT. I don't know if y'all are going to allow me to say how I really feel on this panel, but I'm prioritizing making the SHIT happen in real life. So those are my priorities.
Absolutely. And Grant.
Yeah, I'll be political. I'll say the year got off to a horrible start given the last 24 hours or so, particularly if you're interested in expanding opportunity. So the 3 priorities that we have at the center is expanding early stage support for Black founders, As Khadija mentioned, we have a program called Lift, which is preparing founders for investor readiness. So coming up next week, we have the demo day. Certainly would love to see this community also show up there. But we have a couple other programs that we're starting, including one which is a little earlier stage called Ignite, which is about opportunity assessment, lean startup. So looking forward to that. Expanding access to early stage capital, second focus. So we worked with Goody Nation on Equity Wings earlier this year. We have another focus cohort that's going to launch in a week or so, trying to activate our alumni community, the accredited investors, to form an angel syndicate around the AUC. And then thirdly, we have a student venture fund that we're also starting. So today actually was the first class related to that fund, trying to introduce our students to venture, and they will actively invest in the startup ecosystem. So the hope is between those two, the syndicate and the student venture fund, we'd have somewhere around $1 million to put into the Atlanta ecosystem. Along with that early stage capital, we have a program we're doing with UGA called FAST that supports applications to the SBIR STTR program from the SBA. So the federal government largest investor in early stage startups in the country by transaction. So we want to make sure that our community gets their fair share. So we provide consultants that help you develop the proposals so you can apply to those programs. The third thing that we're focused on is research and really moving kind of from research to action to inform policy, developing a community of practice around entrepreneurship research. So, something that people don't know is how understudied this is. I had a colleague at Howard when I was there. They did a study, looked at 6,000 articles in 30 journals. They could only locate 13 that were focused on Black entrepreneurship. So, again, if you want to manage something, you got to be able to measure it. So we have to have people engaged and looking at that. So those are our 3 priorities.
No, absolutely. I definitely want to stay there for a little while. Specifically speaking about the Lift incubator, that you all. So I've had I was blessed with the opportunity to come in and sit with some of the founders and judge some of the panels. So Khadija, my question to you is, with some of the founders that have come through the Lift program, what gaps have you noticed, and how has the Lift program helped meet those gaps? And also touch on the event that you all have Friday.
Yeah, so in 2025, I'm working my butt off to try to do whatever I can to bring more support, resources, and community for Black founders. And so Lift Incubator is a huge part of that. And not just specific to the Lift Incubator. I work with early stage entrepreneurs all over the place, all over the country, through Black Ambition, through my consulting work, through investments that I've made, all kinds of things. And what I'm seeing across the board is not even particular to Black founders, but I think just founders in general right now. Like, I don't know what y'all been reading in TechCrunch or Forbes under 40, but like entrepreneurship is not sexy. It is not fun. It is not always like roses, and it is not about the clout, and it is just not easy. And I have seen so many entrepreneurs focusing on everything except going out and getting the customers the hard way, like doing the hard things. With my first company, which I sold in 2 years, I was outside while I was still practicing law, which is like a 13, 14-hour day job, with my clipboard, going to events, like manually talking to people that I did not know, getting customers the hard way, which I think is necessary for really early stage tech startups. And a lot of folks are focused on everything except customers. And investors, great. Marketing, branding, great. Activations, fantastic. You're on a panel at South by Southwest, that's nice. But unless it means more customers, that actually doesn't mean a lot. And so just knowing that Black founders have a higher bar, that we're expected to have more traction, we're expected to be better, have our stuff together at a higher level, it has been very interesting to see that a lot of businesses, for whatever reason, are not focused on the business of the business, which is the customers. They're thinking about all the other things. So really trying to bring that focus back to, this is great, all the things that you're doing, but how do you get customers? Because if you don't have customers, and if you don't have a plan for getting customers, and you don't have something that you've done, you figured out, and you just need money to be able to execute on, very few people are going to want to actually invest in you so that you can just go and like try to see if some Facebook ads will work. So we've been thinking a lot about customer acquisition and how to really focus founders on the essential part of a startup, which is offering a valuable solution to a problem that people actually want to pay for. It sounds simple and fundamental, but I think it's very lacking in the general startup environment now. So we've been very focused on that, and generally, building upon that to bring more startups to investor readiness, where they would be ready for a check from my fund, or from me as an angel investor, or for some of the people in this chat. It is key. I think as much as we rail about the lack of capital for Black founders, we also have to get our stuff together and make sure that we are building a business and not an Instagram page that makes us feel good.
No, absolutely. That that also helps me segue into the question I wanted to actually ask Barry. And then, ask Candace afterwards. But Barry, what do you believe the challenges are between Atlanta investors and Atlanta founders? Oftentimes we continuously hear from founders, there's no capital for us to raise in Atlanta. We have to go elsewhere. And, from investors, you know, at times they may feel like there are not enough quality companies here. So where do you feel like the disconnect is? Where do you feel like the challenge is?
Great question. The challenge is education. And it goes both ways. There are, and I'm not just speaking on venture capital investors, I'll get into that in a second, but just capital in general. There's a lot of Black money in Atlanta. And unfortunately, a lot of that money has not been educated on how to invest into technology focused companies. They scale different, they raise money different, they provide liquidity in different time frames. And so what that does is that scares them away because they're not educated on how to diversify their portfolio into the tech space. And then that leaves a lot of founders sour because they're looking at high net worth individuals like, man, you have all this money, I have this great idea, it's right in your wheelhouse, and I can't get 25K from you, I can't get 50K from you, I know you got it. And so I think that education piece on the investor side, I mean, that's actually something that Baisha touched on that we want to start to chip away at with Black VC this year. It's just educating investors, high net worth individuals on how to start dipping their toe into the early stage investing space so that, as Khadija mentioned, when she's getting founders ready, they have a place to go. And then on the founder side, it's also education. I talk to a lot of founders every single year, and we have to do a better job of coaching our founders in Atlanta on what the proper steps and the proper avenues are to grow and scale a technology business, because every technology business does not scale the same. There are what's called lifestyle businesses, which I think has gotten a bad connotation, but there are a lot of millionaires running around with lifestyle businesses. But lifestyle businesses, typically, they can get to profitability faster. There's something that an entrepreneur can kind of bootstrap on their own. Typically, a venture capitalist is not going to write you a check, but it's great for a high net worth individual that is looking for some quicker liquidity. And so starting to educate founders on the type of company that they are building, and then pairing them with the newly educated high net worth individuals on those lifestyle businesses. I think we shy away from that a lot of times because it's not the unicorn, it's not the $1 billion company. But honestly, those are a lot of the companies that I see. If they would take that route, they would have a lot higher probability of success. The second part on education for founders is truly understanding what venture capital is. And so when we think about the companies that get venture capital, these companies consider that you've now made it to the NBA. Like it is so few people that make it to the league. And that's venture capital. There are a lot of people out there that are working really, really hard. They're sacrificing, they're investing in themselves. And the fact of the matter is that it is so competitive. I talk to my son about this with basketball every single day. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter how hard you work, but there's always somebody else working a little bit harder or working just as hard as you. And you guys are going to compete for those couple of spots that are available. At Collab, we write 6 checks a year and we invest all around the country. And so I think understanding what I see a lot of times from Atlanta founders, and honestly, this is not just Atlanta. I'm going to focus on Atlanta because that's what we're talking about. But these are founders outside of the big, trio, which is San Francisco, Boston, New York, is that they just don't think big enough. And so I meet a lot of founders that have really, really great ideas, and you look at their projections and they're growing, even in their projections, not even what's actually happening, they're only growing 80% year over year. And as a venture capital investor, I'm going to give you more leeway and I may look deeper into what you're doing because this is my focus and I love investing in Black entrepreneurs. And I understand that we have not had the same foundational education. I went through it. I didn't have that same education when I started building. And so I give a little bit of grace, and sometimes I'll kind of push founders to think bigger. But other venture capitalists are not going, they're going to look at your deck and they're going to never answer your email, or they're just going to say, no, we're going to pass. They're not going to give you a good reason. And so to give you some clarity there, as a venture capitalist investing in early stage companies, I need you growing at 200, 300, 400% year over year in the first couple of years. Now, as your revenue grows and you get a lot bigger, then that can slow down a bit, and not drastically. You still want to be growing 100% year over year, but in the early stages, I need to see you growing. I need to see you going from 100K to 500K, from 500K to 2.5, 3 million. Like those are the types of jumps that we need to see in venture capital, because we have to exit our fund within 10 years. And the only way we do that is that if you grow at that pace. And I just think a lot of founders don't truly understand how to approach venture capitalists to get the capital. And I think if we start to bridge those education gaps, I think we'll have less founders that are angry at the investors around town that, we're not giving them money, we're not writing checks, we're not doing what we said we were going to do. And they can also spend that energy focused on building the business that they have set out to build. And then we'll also bring more early stage capital into the environment. And all of that becomes wealth generating activity. And so that education piece, I think, is an area that we all really need to focus on in 2025.
Absolutely, absolutely. And really, I love the answer that you gave, because a lot of founders, there's like this built up, I mean, for lack of a better word, just anger, right? It's built up anger and frustration towards investors because, it's just not understood. Why aren't you investing? Like you see white people getting this capital with just an idea, and they already have like a baked out product. So if you to be able to explain that, that's gold. I'm pretty sure it's gold for a lot of people in these comments. So I actually want to shift over to Candace, actually. Candace, I met you a few years ago. We stayed in contact, love what you're building with my Ivana. And I mean, from over the course of 10 years, you've grown significantly, from a customer standpoint, from a revenue standpoint. The question I want to ask you is, when you think about what Atlanta has done well in terms of supporting you, and when you think about what Atlanta could do better, I guess, what would you like to see, in the future? Like, what would you like to see, to make sure that companies like you are thriving, especially if you've been 10 years in business, over 7 million in revenue, what would you like to see?
Yeah, I remember hearing that quote, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And I was like, I don't know if I can make it 10 years, but here we are. It'll be 13 this year. And to piggyback off of what Barry was sharing, the main question is, how do you get to the growth that investors want to see? right? A lot of us are not even making it to that point to be VC backed. We just closed our seed round last year after 12 years. And the reason being is that I really see it's two things. One, we don't have the early stage capital to build the product, to be honest, to build that quality product that gets a product market fit and to start gaining the traction that investors want to see. So I think that, Atlanta as an ecosystem, we do well with galvanizing behind companies, right? But how do we get the product right if we're talking about Atlanta Black tech and building tech companies? That is an advantage that other ecosystems have had that we necessarily haven't because of the reasons that Barry pointed out. A lot of investors weren't as familiar in investing in tech companies. A lot didn't understand what it actually takes to prove out your product, right? To build out and get the traction that's expected. And so in addition to that, more execution support is needed. So how do we take education to execution now? Because I did all the programs. I know we got all the programs, right? How do we take that to execution, right? Was the biggest gap too. And honestly, to be fair, as founders, building great products, it does take time, right? But I think that we need better operational knowledge and execution knowledge at these early stages to build a product that sticks and to be able to have, again, the knowledge, the networks, the expertise. And again, all these things take money too. So there are expectations of us as founders that we can't meet because we don't have the traction. We don't have the traction to support it. So that is where I see it's our biggest gap, but it's also our biggest area of opportunity that I'll touch on more later on, because as an ecosystem, again, I believe that all the skills are here. The knowledge and insight is here, but there's been this gap of how to move it into execution to be able to present your business the way a VC wants to see it, right? And so for us, and I'll just speak, for our company, early on, we were able to raise money, through startup accelerators, angel investors. Shout out to Mike Ross. He was like the only angel investor, putting in the first check into a lot of our companies, right, over a decade ago. And so many more angel investors have now come, to the table. And from there, I did a bunch of pitch competitions. So it's kind of like, especially as Black founders, is raising capital by any means necessary, and then putting it into the product, and then just getting it, again, from point A to point B. And so I think that to master that, and just to be honest, as a founder, the resilience that it takes to stay in the game, it gets really tough. And that's, we get weary. I'm just, being honest. And, that's where great communities like Goody Nation does come in. And so I believe that as a community, if we can figure out how to move our companies to execute and hit the metrics that do make us more investable, we will start to close that gap a lot sooner. For our product, we started out with the hair analysis kit, similar to 23andMe for your hair. So once we had enough capital just to get that product, we just grew through customer acquisition and getting the word out. Press really fueled our business for many years. And I think that's something that we do have an advantage on, and something that we could do even more, telling our stories, right? Our stories, the press, it fueled our business, pretty much to this day. And from there, I will say the turning point, though, was building out the technology to a point where we could now license it. And that shifted our model B2B. and Unilever became my first customer. We licensed it on to Shea Moisture for SheaMoisture.com. And then from there, I saw that, oh, my traction could actually come B2B, because with each licensed customer, we have millions of users coming from each channel. And so investors do need to see that strategic growth opportunity, right? Your competitive advantage, how do you protect that? And so I think as a community, right, if we know our mantra, Atlanta influences everything, how do we take that influence, education, and move it to execution and get our companies from stage to stage? So that is how we were able to stay in the game. And also knowing that Atlanta is the hair capital of the world. So where else can I do this? Where else should I be able to do this? And so tapping into that more, I think we have the ingredients, but let's master the formula.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to stay in this area for a little while. And this next question is actually framed kind of catered towards Barry and Bahija. So Barry, I mean, you've been a founder who's actually exited. You're now also a managing partner for Collab Capital. So you understand the funding path to from idea to inception. And Baija, your background from being from banking, for also now from being investment banking to also being a VC as well. You understand the landscape of just the funding path from idea to inception. So my question is, how important is angel investing? Atlanta is filled with individuals who are working high paying jobs, where they fit into that criteria of an accredited investor. So for all individuals who are curious about angel investing, my first question is, one, why is it important? And then two, what tips do you have for individuals who are interested in angel investing and participating? Baija, I'll start with you.
I think why it's important, if you're an accredited investor, obviously depending on how much liquidity you have, it's always good to diversify your portfolio. So if you're, invested in the equity markets, you're invested in the debt markets, there's so many different areas that you could be investing in, and alternatives is one of them. So venture capital, private equity, depending on kind of how much liquidity you have will dictate, what is your check size and what your resulting equity position would be. But I think it is important. There's plenty of people who wrote checks into companies, and whether you have your friend or your cousin or your uncle is starting a company and you get in a friends and family round, so it's super early, and that company turns out to be Uber, you can make a lot of money. But if we're thinking about tips, and who should be an angel investor or just expectations, I think it starts with managing expectations. So it's certainly a high risk, high reward place to be playing in. You have to be willing to lose money. So whatever check that you're writing, be absolutely willing to say goodbye to that money, because the odds are, if you invest in 10, 20 companies, maybe one of them will return your capital. So you have to be willing to lose your money, I would say. I always advise people who want to be angel investors to invest in what they know. So if you have a background in finance or banking, consider investing in fintech. If you have a background in healthcare, consider investing in health tech. If you have a background in cybersecurity, invest in cybersecurity startups, because you want to be able to conduct your own due diligence. There is such a thing as investor bias, where some investors will get in on a deal just because another investor invested in it, and they're like, oh, that's like the seal of approval. But everybody will have losers in their portfolio. And if you're going to be investing your money, you should absolutely be able to conduct your own due diligence. Also, regardless of what your check size is and what your resulting equity position is, whether it's de minimis or not, you're still an owner in the company. So if you are an owner, you should be thinking about how you can actually support those companies. If you have a background in cybersecurity and you're investing in a cybersecurity startup, think about, how you can support the company. Can you make customer introductions? Can you make investor or distribution partner introductions to help actually bring revenue to the company and to help them grow? And I'd also say, like, as you're thinking about sourcing, how do you find startups to invest in? One thing that you can do is like let VCs know that you're wanting to angel invest, and what your check size is, what your criteria is. Sometimes, like, in our portfolio, we'll have founders who are raising a bridge round. So like a round in between, like maybe a seed and a Series A that's smaller, that, we could have angel investors come into to write a check. And I'll actually put a link in the group chat where our other GP, Jill Burke-Solomon, started a Google forum where she collected information on angel investors. And so when some of our portfolio companies have like bridge rounds, for example, to bring capital in, she sends that deal out to this listserv, and whoever is interested can write a check and can get the insight from us as well on the viability of the business, the projections, and so on and so forth. I'd also say joining pitch competitions is super helpful because one, it's a way to get deal flow, and two, it's a way for you to see how the panel of judges what questions are they asking. And those questions you can take back and ask for yourself as you're evaluating deals to invest in. And then I'd also say, as a last tip before I pass it to Barry, join angel networks and learning programs. So whether it's, Black VC has the Black Venture Institute, which teaches executives, accredited investors, how to become an angel, and provides a community of people over which you can collectively invest, whether you're investing individually or forming a syndicate. TIE Atlanta is another one. I judged a few of their pitch competitions. They kind of come together to deploy capital. And also Equity Wings through Goody Nation and Black VC's partnership is another area where you can learn and collectively invest.
Yeah,
Hey,
B
Barry.
hit on.
Hey, I was gonna say B gave such a strong answer
Yeah,
towards
that's what I was about to say. I don't need
yeah.
to.
No,
Solid.
perfect. No, yeah, that was definitely solid. Actually, Grant, man, I wanna shift to you. So Grant, me and you, jumped on the call earlier, and we just had questions. We were talking about just what the Atlanta in general, what the Atlanta ecosystem does well, and then we talk about other states and things that we can do here and probably do better. We had a conversation about that earlier, and I was thinking about the question I wanted to ask you. So, in light of what we spoke about earlier, what are some things that we do well here in Atlanta, and ultimately, and what could we improve on?
Yeah. I was thinking about it. Also, when we first talked about it, was through the lens of policy. So, I was really thinking about the kind of anti-DEI. I know people have covered that in the earlier panels, but there are kind of some things that, from a policy standpoint, really important to build a technology ecosystem or entrepreneurship ecosystem, enhancing education and skills development. Facilitating, the exchange of information around technology and innovation, really critical. Obviously, improving access to capital, and then promoting awareness and networking. So, since I've come to Atlanta, I've noticed that obviously, we have the benefit of having the mayor's office. You got Donnie that's really active. There have been some really good things that have happened around there. So they formed this ACES collaborative, for the universities and colleges in the Atlanta ecosystem. And they've been really intentional about making sure that the AUC, Spelman, Clark Atlanta, Morehouse School of Medicine has been actively involved. So I think on the education, front, been doing a good job in terms of making sure that there's parity around opportunity and education, kind of aligning the work that the colleges are doing. I think that's been fantastic. Promoting awareness. I mean, you'll hear a lot of people talking about it. Atlanta's push to be a top 10 ecosystem, right? So that's coming because the mayor's office is so laser focused, or top 5, so laser focused on that as an objective. And as part of the ACES collaborative, and Donnie probably will touch on it, the research report was developed that highlighted some of the things that Atlanta, is really good at, particularly as it relates to its Black tech ecosystem. So obviously have strong colleges and universities, have a lot of students that stick around, high density of Black tech talent in the area. So that part is all fantastic. But again, if I think specifically on the Black tech ecosystem side, so I've come to Atlanta from DC, and a couple of things that the mayor's office did there for inclusive innovation, I think would be beneficial here also. So one of the things was developing an inclusive innovation incubator that they had this partnership with Howard University, again, to make sure that access to innovation and support was distributed throughout the city and not just clustered around the big R1 PWI institutions. So I think that was a major initiative in DC. I think that would be beneficial here also. The other thing that they did was around capital. So put out a competitive call. So the inclusive incubator was also competitive. It was chosen to be placed at Howard, but competitive around who managed it. They also put a competitive bid out for an inclusive innovation fund. So to attract professional fund managers, again, to make investments in the Black and brown entrepreneurs to make sure that there's equity around funding. So, again, I think those are a couple of concrete things that could enhance the Atlanta ecosystem and made even more important by, kind of what might not be there from federal support. So, you look at the edict that came out from the president. Just literally right before I joined this call, got off a call with somebody from the federal government. People were scrambling around. Some people were put on furlough. Other people are revising what they have on websites and literature, et cetera. So it's created quite a bit of confusion. But there's uncertainty around, programs like 8A, something that provides opportunity to Black founders, right? There are questions about what happens with MBDA, something that provides access to capital, access to networking. And certainly I do agree that, we need philanthropy to come in. One of the other areas that we need to come in is local government to help fill the hole.
Listen, Grant, I see why Joey really fought for you to be on this panel again this year, because you're just a wealth of knowledge, an exact, definite resource directory. So, definitely thank you. And I'm pretty sure everybody in the comments thanks you. This is what I like to call a lightning round. So I want each person on this panel to go around and say what it is exactly how people can engage with your organization. For example, Baija, what can people in this chat, how can they engage with Black VC, Khadijah Lift Incubator, et cetera? So I'll start with you, Candace.
Okay, yes, I love this question because it's actually something I've been ideating on for a very long time, after being in this summit. And I want to propose a model that we can adopt to move from ideation, connection to execution. So everyone's familiar with the PayPal mafia, right? I know they're not the best example right now, given the state of the industry, but I think that one thing that they did master was how these founders and early employees strategically work together behind the scenes to grow that company, but also look at all the companies that were able to start from the wealth that was produced from PayPal, right? Tesla, LinkedIn, Palantir, SpaceX, YouTube, Yelp. And a lot of them came from Silicon Valley's college ecosystem, right? So I believe Atlanta can do the same thing, right? We have the AUC, we have Georgia Tech, we have the skills, talent, everything here. So how do we take our influence and move it into execution? So I talked to Joey about this. I talked to Rayshawn. Me and Mike Ross have been talking about this for a while. And this concept I've put together is what I'm calling mafia movements. And it's a way where we can form mafias behind each company to strategically come together because, you know, let's be honest, one of our shortcomings as a culture is we're not moving collectively together, right? Everyone has been doing their own thing, building their own thing. But if we can strategically come together, I believe that we can hit our goals really fast. And so the mafia movement is going to be to help us capitalize and actualize the power of our cultural capital to scale businesses through our gifts, talents, resources, relationships, and networks. And so I want to put my Ivana as the guinea pig because we're at a significant inflection point of growth in the market. And when I look at the numbers of, you know, our budget, what we're spending, right? I could put $300,000 into ads for Facebook, you know, again, which is going to a company that does not necessarily, that doesn't, he actually said it, that is not in our best interest. I could actually pour that into our own community and probably reach our goals even faster. So this is what I want to propose, the Mafia movement. And it's for everyone in this ecosystem to join a mafia, get behind a company, and contribute your skills. So that's in marketing and business development and technology development and even funding. In the same way that we set aside like our employee option pool, we're going to set aside an equity pool
Oh, Candace,
where you
hold up.
can.
No, I'm about
Okay.
to say not too much. We don't want to give away everything just
Okay.
yet. Maybe
I don't want to give
we'll
away. I don't want to give
yeah,
everything, but just to show you
yeah.
how it works, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. So if you're interested in joining this and being a part of how this works, that's what I want to propose that we do, and then we could get behind one company every quarter when we come together as a summit. And I'm happy to chat with anyone about this, but I just want to put it out there as a model, and I think that we could do it. I think we could build true businesses together. So
Absolutely.
join the My Ivana Mafia, and we'll talk more.
Absolutely. I'm gonna pass it over to Barry.
Fantastic, Candace. Love the idea. And so I'll be brief. I wish I had some time to get back to you so you can finish. But
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk.
In a similar vein, like just support portfolio companies, i.e., it's supporting Black folks. That's who we invest in. They need customers. If you see a Black product out there, i.e., you heard Isaac earlier with Fanbase, jump on the platform, you know, support it, go invest in it. We just have to get behind each other. And I know what Candace is talking about is one way to do it. And I love the concept, love the idea. But just support founders. And then last, if you do know any Black founders, send them to our website, have them put their stuff. And I said, we're building a database. Like I said, we want to be able to invest in all of them, but we do want to be able to somehow send them some education material, just send them something to support them. So yeah, I'll be brief. I know we're up on time.
Okay, Bahija.
I'd say ways that you can help very quickly. We're always hosting events. So if you have space where we can host our event, if you would like to be a sponsor for one of our events or a partner to co-host, and I'd say I'm going to share a couple of links to our Black VC Summer Soiree on Martha's Vineyard. Very quickly, I co-founded the Black VC Boston chapter and originally curated this event. This year will be our third year doing it, and we're looking for sponsors to put it on. Obviously, there's been a rollback in DEI funding, but this was a really, really well-attended and regarded event that we want to continue to host. So I'll put some links to the recaps. And if you're interested in serving as a partner or sponsor to us in any capacity, please connect with me on LinkedIn. And in the blurb, just let me know, in what way you'd like to support.
Absolutely. And I may have some options for you too. Just connect with me offline. Khadijah.
I am so happy that I'm here with Candace because I'm gonna hit you up after this. Kim, another founder of Villy, and I have had a very similar idea. We are hosting a co-working day for Black founders in Atlanta on Friday at the Russell Center. So come through to that. I'll drop the link in the chat, and Kim has been dropping the link in the chat. And we're trying to create more community for Black founders, but also like build real shit together. Excuse my French. I'm gonna just go ahead and put it out there since it's almost 9 o'clock. And so I am all about the mafia movements. I'm all about partnership and not working in our different silos. So I'm happy to plug in there, and I'm going to do that. And I want everybody that's in this chat, that's in this room, to like commit tonight to doing something within your power to support Black founders in this city, whether it is being a beta tester for people, whether it's posting on LinkedIn about folks, whether it's downloading people's app, making a small investment in people's company, helping somebody with their marketing, helping them install a Google tag for their analytics on their website, like something. I and Kim have created a form where people can literally just say who you are and what you have to give to support Black founders, and then also what you need help with. And I want to leave here with action. Like I am so exhausted of the talking and the railing online and the like waiting till the next event to do the same thing again. I want us to really, really be focused on how do we support one another, because as we learned last year in November, we all we got. So that's what I'm about, and that's what I think everybody can do. And then beyond that, if we're doing personal plugs, like I'm raising a fund, as I mentioned previously, and our minimum check size is $10,000. We want to do what Bahija spoke about, which is bring more Black people into this ecosystem, into angel investing, into the venture space, educate them around the space, and activate them as Black angel investors who will go on to make at least 5 additional investments into Black-led companies after they invest with us. That is our goal, create a new ecosystem of funding and founding powered completely by Black folks. And so if you want to learn more about Victive Ventures, hit me up. Come to our demo day for the Lift Incubator next week. Like all the things, everything Black. I would say be as focused on what you can give as you are on how people can help you. So, yeah.
All right, and last and certainly not least, Grant.
All right, yeah, I'll continue with the theme. So at the center, we work with early stage founders. So both our students who might be nascent founders and also the community. So I would say we have a couple of asks. So you often find founders who are not tech founders. I was a tech founder, so it's a pet peeve of mine. I like to see a team that has a hipster hacker hustler, right? So you have the complete thing. So you don't have to go outside to build. So I'd love to have, particularly given the community we're talking to, people, who we can refer our founders to help form more complete teams. Love to have mentors when we have those teams to help them grow and scale, and also have people who, particularly for those who are building enterprise apps, who can provide introductions to customers, right, through corporate customers. So go to the cbecenter.org. There is a mentor link where you can register to be a mentor. It'll just provide contact, and we'll get back with you, and we can see which way you might help. But I think all of us, want to see a more cohesive ecosystem, right? How do we build better Black startups, have a more vibrant tech ecosystem?
No, I love it all. Listen, I personally, I truly appreciate everyone's time today. You know, all of the information that was given, and again, I'm pretty sure everyone in the comment sections, they truly appreciate. I can tell. I'm looking at it right now. I thank you all, and I'll pass it over to Joey.
Awesome. Truly appreciate this. This is an amazing start to the year. Amazing energy and great insight. You all are true leaders. So they dropped, again, folks watching. We got like 10 minutes total left. We got another big speaker coming up. They dropped some links in the chat there. Please follow up with them on it. I know these people personally. I know them really, really well. They are about the business. We talk about social capital and action in there about both of those. So everybody truly appreciate it. We'll follow up with next steps, and we'll see you later. So, all right. So we got our final speaker to the stage. We couldn't let the city's tech czar, so to speak, what the mayor calls him, go without speaking. I know he's come from multiple events tonight. Donnie, you want to say just take it like a few short minutes to kind of say some words, and then I'll wrap us out. I'll close us out with some action items and next steps.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
My apologies. We were actually on a winter weather update call, and so I know anyone that feels like their street isn't properly salted or plowed feels like we aren't doing anything, but this is an around-the-clock effort. If you haven't already heard, APS will have a 2-hour delay. Atlanta Classical seems to be the only school that's starting on time for whatever reason, so sorry if that's you. But check out the information from your schools, because we want our kids to be safe. And if you can stay home tomorrow, at least early on, try to do that, because temperatures are going to drop, and there is a chance of refreezing, even though there will not be overnight precipitation. So I know this isn't what we wanted to talk about, but it's just top of mind, because at the end of the day, I work for the city first, but then I'm really here to serve you in this ecosystem. So thank you all for being here and toughing it out to the very end. I see some notes about Gwinnett County Schools, and I also heard some really awesome ideas. So I got to thank all the experts, because it's really you that I look to learn from. What I missed, because I was a little disjointed, was that we're going to start a mafia. Is that right?
When she said the term, I was like, maybe we should call it something like a collective. We'll let it roll for now. So
yeah. But and thanks, Jen, for being here. So we've got a growing team that's dedicated to, like I said, advancing this mission. So we've been together for about 2 years in this role, myself and Sasha, who you probably know. Then we've also been able to bring back Jen Bonet. So Jen used to run ATDC back when I was a founder. And so she's joined at Invest Atlanta to run innovation and entrepreneurship. And then Cam Miller is the other part of the team. So we're a mighty 4 people now, trying to do all that we can to support the ecosystem. There 3 things that came to mind just as I've listened to today's comments, and I want to just thread it along your sort of negative, neutral, and positive framework, Joey. I like that a lot. And so on the negative end, things are going to be harder. I think that there was some commentary around how hard it is to raise money, how hard it is to get customers, and around entrepreneurship just not being sexy. So it has always been hard, but I think with some of the changes we're seeing in, at the federal level and across even globally, it's going to be tough. But what I want you to realize is that the people on this call, you are going to be okay. You will be successful because you're resilient, you're well-resourced. I mean, just from being here, and it's not because it's something you learned here today, but I think we often lose touch with how, I'm going to say privileged we are. And so something that helps me stay grounded around this is, I meet people from a lot of different places, but I was at a wedding this past weekend, and I sat with 2 gents around my age, and they hadn't ever heard of ChatGPT. And that was crazy to think that 2 people, that I know and like and trust, they hadn't heard of ChatGPT. And so that's a real risk, but you all are in a very different cap and are, potentially building it or building on top of it and leveraging it in many ways. So I want you to just keep that in mind, because things are going to be okay. And I need you to not despair, because that can just lead to some really unhealthy things. So, you've got this community here to support you. You heard people often say, we all we got. So that's one thing. It may seem dire, but things have always been hard. So you're going to continue to persevere. The second thing is a neutral comment, and really taking some neutral thinking to your business, your job, your even relationships. and assessing what it is that you're trying to drive towards. Is it revenue? Is it impact? Like, but your outcome, then understanding your customer, and then finally, what is the value you to deliver to them so you can continue to stay employed or, keep that customer and retain them, because the world is different. And so we're taking time right now to think about those implications for us and how we can continue to drive the results and impact that we want in this new regime and new world order of sorts. But I want you to be very just internally critical, and not in a negative way, but like I said, in a neutral mindset of, what is it that I do well, and maybe try to build on top of that. And I'm sitting in my daughter's room, and it feels eerily like COVID all over again because the kids are home, and I'm trying to find a quiet space. So I have to apologize if at any point they run in, because we've kind of done away with the entire work from home framework and spaces that we used to have. So they're running around, and I talked about things changing, and so my goal with my daughter was just to be a good dad. And like all of a sudden she hits puberty. Anybody that has kids, they probably experienced this too. And all of a sudden I'm old and decrepit, and she makes fun of my dad bod, and I can only get one hug every 24 hours. And so for a long time, me thinking that I wanted her to like me, that's what I was driving towards, but that's not even, what matters the most. I need to make her a productive citizen. So, the same way in your business, think long and hard about what you're driving towards, because you'll have to hit those metrics. It's about execution, something I've heard a lot today that I really enjoy, that thinking, because, there used to be some, yeah, they don't laugh at our jokes, some things that we would get just for showing up. But I think that that's going away. And then lastly, on a positive note, if anybody had a chance over the holidays to go see that Mufasa movie, and so I really loved it. It was the prequel that I never knew I needed. But there's a song, and it talks about if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so that's very much what we're planning and trying to do here, right? And so I'm so thankful that Joey's here, convening this group so we can talk about these problems and these approaches. And what I hope and expect is that there's going to be, this information shared out, and then also a way to action some of these concepts. And yes, it's a African proverb. And I got to find this Brian Davis guy. He's really disgruntled. You gotta, I know you don't want to pat on the back, but maybe we can find out what's going on with you, man, and then get a sense for how we can be helpful to you. And so I know we don't have time to engage and have questions, and maybe we'll do that when we're together in the coming weeks. But just thank you for your partnership, for everyone here, because I've seen a bunch of familiar faces, and I think we're going to have a great 2025 together.
I appreciate it, man. So I just really want to highlight your commitment. And again, people think it's cool to work for the city and have a prestigious position, but then you see, like, when an emergency happens and someone's on calls probably all through the night and multiple days, and rarely sleeping, and taking calls in your daughter's room and stuff like that. That's what it really looks like. So I just want to say thank you as a citizen. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your commitment, and also thank you for your excellence. So truly appreciate it. And I'll let you go ahead and go, so you can get back to serving us all well. But what we will, I'll go ahead and close out in a few seconds, and talk about next steps for us all. So truly appreciate you, Donnie.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. All right, cool. I'm going to also bring back to the stage Rayshawn as well. So one, thank you all. It's been an interesting, really a few week period. Again, we went to multiple snows. I actually don't know when the last time it snowed this much in Atlanta in a short period of time, but it is what it is, right? And so again, we're going to take the neutral thinking. The facts are that it snowed. We had to alter, but I also will take a saying from one of my favorite college coaches, and Nick Saban, is never waste a failure. Right? Never waste a failure. And so we didn't necessarily fail, but it's like a failure in this case is a bad situation, or what can be perceived as a bad situation. So let's talk about how we can make it good, right? In our normal format of doing this, we would not have had a ton of time for community input. There may have been time for 3 to 4 questions and stuff like that, or responses. But what we're going to do on February 1st at the gathering spot is dedicate 45 minutes to an hour per section. So 45 minutes to an hour for just simply K-12 for ideas and questions from you all. It's not about the experts. Well, experts will be in the room, right? Because they're part of the community too. But this is time for us to tap in, to take some of the things we learned today, right? And then start to action them and start talking about how we're actually going to activate against them for the rest of the year. So that's what February 1st will be. We'll do one for K-12, we'll do one for tech workforce, and we'll do one for startups and investing. I want to commend everyone because the chat is popping. We probably got 3,000-4,000 comments in the chat, and I'm looking for that same type of energy in terms of ideas. It's a true town hall. So that is our immediate next step, but we have a few others, right? We have a few others. One of the bigger things from a community standpoint is identity, right? And so we're actually unveiling now. If you look to the upper right-hand corner of the screen, we actually have a new logo for Atlanta Black Tech and branding and stuff like that. It may seem a little bit simple, but we're putting more resources behind this community and kind of taking it to the next level. Next up, we want to talk about and document our history, right? This Atlanta Black Tech community has been going on for a long time. You know, I started doing stuff around 2008. Now people call me the OG or AOG, and there are people that were before me, right? And as time goes on, you know, our names will be forgotten. That's just the history. That's just the trend of the world, right? Unless we do something about it. So just like we encourage people to get the elders in your family on video and document history, we're gonna launch a Atlanta Black Tech history documentary process this year. So our goal is to get at least 10 quote unquote OGs on camera documenting what they experienced and their thoughts on Atlanta Black Tech over the years. And then we're also going to launch almost like a Wikipedia style format in terms of getting articles on people, places, organizations, and stuff like that. This is going to be a community activity. And so if you're interested in helping out with this history project, please let us know. Be clear. Well, so for me, you can reach out to me specifically on this. We're going to look to partner with some organizations as well. We're also going to do the next iteration of our dinner series. Rayshawn, I'll kick it to you if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then the action items on the dinner series.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one I'll start with, we're looking for more dope individuals like Milton, to come in and be dinner hosts. I mean, as you can see, and as some of them already explained, like the dinners are very, very unique. For one, for people who are coming in, they're looking for a community, but then also too, these dinners are intimate and, they're small and you're able to, directly get the resources that you are looking for. So definitely be on the lookout on that. And then also too, another additional piece to the dinners, we're also going to be putting together what, Joey came up with the term welcoming committee. And so when you think about, certain individuals who are coming to the Atlanta ecosystem, let's use Marlon Nichols for an example with Mac Ventures. If he was to come to Atlanta, those individuals who are in the welcoming committee, they'll, be in charge of taking this individual out. It kind of reminds me of something that Invest Atlanta used to do. So Donnie, be on the lookout for a call. I definitely want to talk to you about that and revisit that. So in short, yeah, we're looking for more dinner hosts, and also stay tuned on more details when the actual dinner series will start off again.
Yeah. So I'll say this on the welcoming committee, looking at Invest Atlanta, we're looking at the Chamber of Commerce and a few other organizations as well. I mean, I think for the dinner series, we really want to kick it off top of February, right? So what I would say, if you want to be a dinner host, if you have experience hosting folks, you're energetic, you can hold a conversation, or experience, planning events like Rayshawn said, apply to be a dinner host at atlblacktech.org. If you're not a registered part of the community, please go to the website, atlblacktech.org, and register there. We'll go ahead and get you signed up and then eventually admitted into the Slack community. Already alluded to the speaker series for K-12. So if you want to be a part of that, let us know. Already talked about sharing job opportunities earlier, or in the last panel, they talked about the angel investor training program called Equity Wings. Just know that this year we want to train 100 folks in Atlanta to be angel investors, or at least give them the basics of being angel investors, and then get them to actively start to invest in a company at minimum via equity crowdfunding. So again, that's a goal. Please hold us to it. And the last thing I'll say in terms of action items is there are a ton of major sporting activities or sporting events coming to Atlanta. We just saw 2 days ago the College Football National Championship was held. Coming up, we're going to have like this summer Major League Baseball All-Star Game. You got the FIFA Club World Cup this summer as well, and we all know next summer is some of the World Cup games, right? So these are amazing opportunities, honestly, for people to make money, right? For people to make money. So if you have a business already, if you have ideas, we've got to get you all plugged in, and so we'll be hosting some sessions. We talked to Invest Atlanta about some stuff, and we'll be talking to other organizations to make sure people in our community get plugged in to economic opportunities for these major sporting events. I believe the Super Bowl is going to be here in a few years and stuff like that, right? So again, plug in, start to figure out ways to make money from, I don't do Airbnb, but maybe that's the thing. If you want to host an event, if you want to do something, we gotta get our community activated for these major sporting events, because people are making a lot of money during these situations, and we don't want to be passed by. Kind of final things I will say is, for our activity standpoint, the reality is, yes, our funding is going down too. The tax DEI is real. And so in order for us to do more stuff and run this program effectively, we do need to lean on the community, right? So you can support in one of two ways, right? So you can donate to the Atlanta Black Tech program directly at atlantablacktech.org. You can also text ABT to 707070 to donate. If your company or any other organization wants to support, either directly or behind the scenes, please reach out to me directly as well. Right? It does take some money to keep this program going and to build community and stuff like that and activate these programs. And kind of in closing, I just want to thank the team here at Goody Nation. Definitely want to thank Rayshawn. I want to thank Andrea Long for supporting, Danielle Rose, the social media volunteers that are doing their thing. We had some event planning volunteers that weren't needed for today, but that will be needed in a few weeks. So I want to thank the board of Goody Nation, the larger staff of Goody Nation, and all of our supporters out there. Thank you all for your hard work and helping to make this kickoff to the year super successful. Right. I'll also leave you with this. Just generally speaking, vote. No matter what year it is, right? Whether it's presidential year, it's a midterm, it's a mayoral year, please vote as well. This year in Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, there is another mayoral election. So please get registered to vote if you haven't already, and please vote. And again, in a second, those who register, you will get an email asking for feedback about tonight. And please rate that. Also, if you have any like quotes and things of that nature, please click the link in the email to give some more detailed thoughts. And then it also allows you to register for the event on February 1st, right? So register for the event on February 1st. So in closing, Rayshawn, is there anything you want to add before we kind of get out of here?
No, I actually want to give everybody their time back. So I'm going to just leave it as simple as thank you all for showing up, and we'll see you on February 1st.
Cool, y'all. Well, I'll just say this too. Outwork yesterday, y'all. Stay magnetic. We'll see you all February 1st. Peace out.